SpecFicMedia.com presents Beyond the Wall, a Game of Thrones podcast. With hosts Christiana Ellis, Chooch Schubert, Vivid Muse, and Nuchtchas. Hi everybody, welcome to Beyond the Wall, Season 6. Tonight we're discussing Episode 2 of Game of Thrones titled Home, with no spoilers past the currently aired episodes. I'm Chooch, and as always, we're joined by Christiana.
Hello, everybody. And if you hear little dog noises, it's because I've got an impatient little dog. I think she'll be okay, but right now she thinks she needs attention.
Right. Hello to Nutty.
Hello, Hodor.
Aww. What you talking about, Willis?
God.
Gonna get a lot of use out of that tonight. And hello to my Vivid Muse.
Hi, sweetie. Hi, guys.
And I think everybody saw the intro there. Let me bring it up again. Is our new logo artwork designed by Natalie Metzger, or the Fuzzy Slug.
Yay.
Just listening in audio, of course, you should probably, check out SpecFicMedia.com maybe for...
Or the ID3 art.
Yeah, oh, that too.
Yeah, he's setting it this week.
So yeah, we went from, well, for people that are on audio and can't see it quite this second, if you're on the road, don't look away.
Please.
The last logo was us on the wall, since it was Beyond the Wall, and now we're even further beyond. We're at the tree where the brand is with the three-eyed raven. And so we've updated our little caricatures. We've got some updated hair happening. Some updated pets happening, and in the background we've got PG hanging out with Leaf, who's one of the children of the forest, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
She did a great job.
Totally.
Really just love working with her. She's just consummate professional and so creative.
Absolutely. A quick news bit. We've already have 10 entries with our contest this year.
Nice.
We've gotten stuff come in from YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and the website, and direct emails. So coming in all over the place.
What?
And live. Yeah.
And live.
And live, yes.
Q&A. Well, one of the entries actually did multiple entries. She, Talon from Germany, who has in the past has written us some, she had done the same comment in multiple places and said, by the way, where would you prefer to have comments? And so this we were specifically gearing towards Facebook.
Yeah,
So
that's the easiest place.
Facebook page, please.
Yeah.
If
And thank you. But whatever's easiest for you, the listener.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
The only reason I
But-
prefer Facebook is because it kind of opens a conversation sometimes that leads to like a deeper conversation when we have the discussion. But yes, please, any way that's easy for you works for us. We just love to hear from people, especially you coming back again.
So I had actually missed Talon's email last week when it would have been relevant. We had a couple other ones this week, comments directly emailed in, but I'm thinking we should probably wait towards the end.
Yeah, okay.
And get our thoughts in first.
Okie doke.
That way, if anybody writes about something that we covered, we don't have to dwell on it too much. I think.
Us? Dwell?
That
We
never
do
happens.
have Jennifer Fuss in the Q&A saying,
Hey,
okay, smiley face, totally fine.
Wow.
Anime smiley face.
made it. I think it's quite late where she's at.
Yeah.
So this episode 2, we're going to do general overall opinions. My general overall opinion was it felt a bit rushed. Not necessarily a bad thing. You can tell that they're just really setting a lot of things in motion. So it felt a little rushed to me. How about you, Viv?
I I don't know that I feel. I think my words are different. It was totally action packed. We got a lot of information on top of the information we got last week. It was definitely a lot more action in this, and a lot, seeing faces we hadn't seen yet, and learning so much. I liked the pacing of it. It was, I think, a good pace after last week's.
Cool. How about
You know
you?
me, I'm easy to please. I just love what they're doing anyways.
Christiana?
Well, it's funny because when I had just watched it, and then my friend Mike is on, he's on Central Time, so he's watching an hour after me. And so he sends me a message related to some of the events happening mid-episode when I knew he was still watching. And just my thought at that point, just thinking back on it, was just like, this season is not wasting time, man. They are in a hurry to get things moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same idea as saying that it's rushed, but kind of from a different perspective. In the sense that it didn't feel too fast for me. It felt like instead of screwing around and taking a long time for things to happen, they're moving. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single thing is handled perfectly necessarily, but I kind of like that stuff's moving, wheels are turning, there are things happening in the story, and it's not just let's sit around and talk more about the stuff that we know already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't think it was
Nutty?
rushed. I think it was just action-packed. It was a lot of stuff going on. There were probably some of the best things that this show has ever done in this episode, along with the worst things this show has ever done. And they seem to do that a lot. They give us something really, really horrible, and they pair it with something amazing.
Yes. Yeah. They've got that down, that 1-2 punch.
One thing I'll add is just the part of the episode that was not rushed was lingering shots of Jon Snow being dead.
Yeah.
Because I at a rough estimate, I guess that it took about 18 minutes of the episode was just still shots of him being dead on the table. That's a rough estimate. It might be off a little bit.
Sounds right. And yeah. That is probably where there was the most lag on the episode. It was just looking at Jon Snow.
Well, it was that whole sequence. I mean, we'll discuss it in more detail, but I was laughing in that sequence, not because I found like the story context funny, but because I felt like the way it was being done was literally the showmakers trolling everybody. And we can get maybe more into that later, but that's definitely how I felt watching the scene, was like, they are screwing with us here. They're messing with us.
Yeah. Jumping in straight from the title sequence, it was changed up a bit. Changed from last season, actually changed from the first episode. We got Pike back on the map, and Dorne was removed from the map.
Yeah.
I don't know if that says something about the storyline, or if they're going to just try to stay a little more current.
I think, don't they change it every episode with where they're going to be, though?
Sometimes. It seems like they leave it there for a long time, even though we might see somewhere else.
I wonder if that's just because historically the show has just spent long times in certain locations, and so maybe that's how it felt, but they always kind of... I suspect there's some inconsistency in terms of how they handle it and like what they decide to change in any given episode. But yeah, just given that this episode didn't have anything in Dorne, and it because we're going back to Pike for the first time since season 3.
Mm-hmm.
It made sense to me that we would need to see that on the map.
Yeah, if I remember right, they had been to Dorne once or twice and been to Braavos once or twice before each of them made it to the map. Though this is coming back, not brand new. So
We needed an extra reminder for people to remember where that was and what was that place. And just visually, a reminder, oh yeah, that's that place that has those weird funky bridges that seem super dangerous.
And so precarious, yeah.
Foreshadow.
I guess before we go too far into it, I guess I'm curious to know, am I the only one that does not read the actors' names? I specifically was like blocking out the zones that they were going to in the intro as well as the actor names. Like I didn't want to know Kit Harington is definitely going to be in this episode because I knew he was going to be it anyway. So we're going to show him no matter what, whether he was dead and stayed dead in the resurrection or whatever didn't work. And then I see other people are like, "Oh, why are you surprised? His name was right there." But I mean, like, it was gonna be there no matter what, and I didn't want to get my hopes up one way or the other. It was almost like I didn't even want to spoil myself as the show was starting. Do you guys pay that much attention to it?
I don't read them. I mean, like I don't block them out. I guess I just really just don't even look at them. They do not even register for me. I'm always looking at the visuals in the background and really just don't even ever notice the names. But that said, I'm on your side that it just his name being there could have still been him as a dead body on the table. It doesn't mean anything. But the other element is, I mean, like I don't want to. This is not like a told you so. Like I guessed it or something. I was so sure he was going to come back. There was really no doubt in my mind at all. If it turned out that they were not bringing him back, I would have been stunned.
Agreed.
Especially as popular a character he is on the show. Forget George's storyline. There was such horror and an outcry from the fans. It's like, you best bring him back. It's like a soap opera. You better figure out how to attach that head back to that body because the fans want that character back.
It will be so. I think this week again will work pretty much to go more or less location. I think Castle Black's the only one that was revisited, and it's not like we need to save that spoiler for the end or anything. But we started under the tree with Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven viewing the past. So the thing talking about there's going to be a lot of flashbacks, I see this is how it's going to happen, it appears. How we're going to get them.
I was so happy about so many things in this sequence. One was, what's her face? Is Leaf the name of the child of the forest? That's her name? I guess I didn't ever register that she had a name. Same as not reading the actor names. But,
I looked it up in honesty when we were doing the design.
It looks so much better this time compared to the way they had her look at the end of, I guess it was season 4 that we saw her before. But I think she looks better, the character design. As for the Three-Eyed Raven, I don't necessarily like the look better, but the actor is awesome. So having him Inside Out be him. But then also, yeah, you're right. Just like having them actually look at the past and seeing, Bran and Benjen and Willis ne Hordor and Lyanna.
About Willis?
And so, especially,
that's not going to get old.
Some of that stuff is very exciting for book readers, just because one of the things that the show has lacked, this is not even spoilers, but one of the things that the show has lacked is some of the times when characters would just think about what they knew about the past, which is hard to show in the television show.
Right.
And so getting glimpses of that story is something that I think people who have only watched the show just really never got some of that added depth, and I'm excited to have some of it get covered.
I actually came across something that PG had written. I think it was in Google Plus or something, that he loved the way that George R.R. Martin would write flashback scenes, and he said something about a flashback within a flashback in a way that only George R.R. Martin could write for this series. And you're right, seeing that kind of a cheat flashback was just, seeing Lyanna alive and vibrant and smart and beautiful and Yeah, it was a moment I never thought I'd see from the books. It's like she's dead, that's it, and it's like she's so vibrant, and it just made that whole Robert's Rebellion and everything just make more sense because she's not just a dim trophy wife. She's like a vibrant woman, that started the whole thing. And
Oh, sorry,
loved it.
Nutty. I was noticing first of all that she hadn't said anything in a couple of places where I thought she would. But yeah, hopefully we'll get her back shortly. But
I
yeah,
have
so
faith.
I didn't mean to interrupt with what you were saying, Viv, but yes, I agree. I think it's so great to just see Lyanna depicted kind of in some ways. I think we're meant to see her as reminiscent of Arya, or the way Arya might be at that age.
Yeah.
And I'm excited too, just because I would have guessed it just from this episode, but then there's confirmation in the scenes from next time that we're not done seeing these past flashbacks.
Yeah.
And I suspect that we wouldn't be seeing them unless they're going to turn out to be relevant to the current present-day story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
I was. Sorry.
No, I just was
Curious.
appreciating Nutty is rebooting. She's got a spinning ball right now, but she's trying to join the callback. It was just so charming, I thought, that the actors that portrayed Ned and Benjen and Hodor Willis, and seeing how well the younger actors picked up on the mannerisms of the way that the actors were portraying those characters, even down to that mouth thing that Hodor does. The younger Hodor Willis did that too, and it was like, oh, that's, I wouldn't have thought, does he do the Hodor lip thing? But as soon as he did it, I recognized that as something that the actor for the older, the Hodor that we've known up till now does, and it was just so utterly charming and endearing that you can understand why Brandon want to leave.
So my first note for this scene, by the way, like my first note for anything for this whole episode is, and I don't know if you can see that, but big, bold, Hodor! I was so excited to see it. I was excited to see old Nan again. I was excited.
Oh, Nan.
Exactly. I love that his name is Willis. I feel like we may have known that from the books. I'm not sure, though. But Willis is like a name that shows up throughout the books.
Yeah.
One thing that George does that other authors do, writing advice always says, don't reuse character names because then people get confused.
Yeah.
But his notion is that's not realistic. People name people after people, and that in this story, there's so many people with the same name. And I just thought that was just really neat.
Yeah.
And I love the whole scene, but I loved seeing that about Hodor, and I can't imagine that they would show us Hodor talking, and not ever get back into what happened. And I loved that they mentioned he's got John's blood.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's coming.
I may be mistaken, but what I vaguely remembered thinking that I knew from the books was that his name was another Walder, because like there's a million Walders,
right? But
that the prevailing theory for why he only said Hodor was that he was kicked by a horse, but that seemed to be have been said like third hand, like
right.
It wasn't from someone who was there. It was so it could be that there was something else to it, but at least I wasn't aware of the possibility that it might be more to it. But this scene definitely seems to like call attention to that in a way that makes me think it might actually come up again. Like I would not be a bit surprised if part of the thread of these flashbacks leads to it turning out that Willis, prior to whatever happens, does something really awesome and heroic.
Right. And I one thing I'm really excited about this aspect, the fact that we're going to be able to see through Bran's eyes actual history, is the other thing about this story is, especially in the books, it's all unreliable narrators. It's all how people remember things, not how they are.
Well, yeah, but that's any history book, you know?
Exactly, and that's kind of the beauty of it.
Mhm.
So, in some instances, you hear somebody has one take on, for instance, Leanna being kidnapped, and then later you'll find out that somebody else has a completely different take on Leanna not being kidnapped but running away. And so this is really exciting to me.
hmm I think one of the things that it has kind of been, of all the stuff that's in the book that I really would never have expect to be in the show at all, just because it would be pretty much impossible to do, is the way that the books very gradually rehabilitated Rhaegar. Rhaegar Targaryen, the son of the Mad King, who was then killed in a battle by King Robert. And that's when, during the Robert's Rebellion, and so on. But in the books, there's this really interesting thread where, at the beginning, everyone we hear from basically thinks he's a monster, and no better than his dad, and just all of that sort of thing. He was a vanquished bad guy, is the way he was thought of at first. But over the course of the books, the more different people we have remembering him, it starts seeming like maybe he was actually a really great guy. He was not like his dad, but he was put in a tough situation, and then there's definitely something going on with Lyanna that we don't have the full story of.
Yeah. So,
and
by the way, I
that's
looked it up.
These flashbacks.
I looked it up, and Hodor's name in the books is Walder. And that opens up the whole thing about how he's part Frey. So yeah, and I'm assuming they decided not to just make Walder everywhere in the show because of confusing.
Big Walder and little Walder, and making that extra confusing because the big Walder is actually the one that's big, and
One thing that I really liked with, I have been whining like a pain in the butt like crazy, but about where's Bran? I need an update. Where's Bran? Where's Bran? And it's kind of like the Harry Potter conundrum. Daniel Radcliffe aging faster than Harry Potter did and faster than they could film the series. But I think that the break and the deeper voice and different Bran has gone through puberty, or at least definitely gotten a good start on it. He's changed so much, but I think that actually fits with his time in the tree, because we're not really clear yet, I don't think, on how long he's been there, but he's gone through so much change since the last time we saw him. It's visible, not just physically, but in his whole manner, and even the way he talked to Mira was more assertive than he did when he, before the end of season 4. So I think it was really well, however they worked it out. I think it worked beautifully, that lapse in time with him gone.
Yeah.
And I was ready to be pissed.
The one thing that kind of, like, I'm not really bothered by it exactly, but both Bran and the Three-Eyed Raven look like they just got haircuts. And so I kind of it seems like that's a little weird. I almost think it would have been cool to have Bran look just like he did in the flashback, and then when we see him wake up in his real body, he's like super shaggy and clothes are kind of messed up.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, it's a visual medium. They want to have the characters look nice, and so.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Having just gone through puberty, a beard would be just like a couple of long hairs.
Oh, I don't mean that necessarily, but just like even the rest of his hair.
Oh, the shaggy hair.
Like,
gotcha.
Well, and then Max von Sydow. I mean, like, he just walked out of Great Clips or something.
Hodor's there. He takes care of them.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not, like I said, I was.
I mean, if Jon gets a bath because he's dead, certainly Bran can get a bath when he's alive.
Yeah.
So, can I?
Very fair point. Yeah.
How awesome it was to see Jory's weird facial hair at the beginning stages in the flashback. Did you guys notice?
I didn't notice.
Oh, the Swordmaster. It was Jory Cassell, and he had those weird, like, reverse goatee patches.
Would it be Jory, though, or would it be Roderick?
Oh, sorry, Roderick. My bad. Wrong person. Jory's the
I missed that.
I think
Someone
Rory
else.
was younger.
Yeah.
He was
yeah.
like Ned's age, I
Yeah,
thought.
Roderick is who I meant. Because in
Yeah.
the first
Huh.
season, he had this really long beard that came from the side and then tied under
Yep.
his face, and then he had to
Mhm.
shave it. So
Yeah. Now, honestly, I would not have been able to pull that name out except the fact that Theon actually mentions him later in
he
his
does.
scene.
It does.
No, I didn't miss that. I'll have to go watch it a fourth time.
Wild. So I was curious how far they're going to go back with these, or if this like sets the time, or if they're going to jump back and forth, in the past. Like, are they going to go before the wall or something?
I don't know, but I think that at least in the scenes from Next Time Bit, I mean, you could potentially call that spoilery, but they aired it with this episode. So, and all I'm going to say is that it looks like the flashback we get then has advanced to Ned being like a grown-up.
Yeah.
Still young, but not, it's been years since the one we saw this episode. So it seems like
Mhm.
they are going to be skipping around. Maybe not back and forth, but at least ahead.
And one thing I do want to mention, because we're never going to get it because Theon's story has moved on. In the books, when Bran is going back, he actually goes back to the Heart Tree, and he sees Theon in the Godswood, and Theon's trying to decide what to do. And he says Theon's name, and Theon hears it, but
Mhm.
doesn't know. It's like a whisper on the wind or something, and it's almost like he influenced him in a way to make the right decision to save Jane. And so we're not going to get that, but I just thought it was interesting to bring up that
Yeah.
it was a very neat thing that we're not going to be able to see.
I had a piece of feedback. Actually, on the Q&A, we had Talon, Jennifer Fuss in the Q&A. It said, "Hey, I'm actually Talon. I have a bank holiday tomorrow." So in Germany, where it is very quite late, she has a good reason for being up.
Mhm.
She gets to sleep in.
Nice.
I had a piece of feedback from Sheriff Bullock, and I'm not going to read through the whole thing. He echoes some of what we were saying. He's concerned about these flashbacks, worried that it could be just a time filler that isn't necessarily going to go somewhere. How will this inform the story as it concerns us today? But I think he makes a good point. We can learn a lot of important information that was lost when we lost Ned and Robert when they both died. So this is a way to get that stuff back. The only thing that comes to mind is the identity of Jon Snow's mother, which I think is a pretty clear plot thing that would be applicable. It could
That's definitely something that was established as a mystery very early on in the show and never really resolved. Because on the one hand, we did have Ned tell Robert that it was just a milkmaid, I think, something like that, right? But we also had Ned imply to Jon that there was something more to this story, and I will tell you the very next time I see you.
Right.
And then, so that's definitely one mystery that seems like a likely thing for us to be able to learn in a flashback that would be relevant now. But then also, I mean, there's a couple of other things that we really don't know much about. Like, obviously, even we're talking about the time period in which Daenerys, as an infant, had to flee with her brother Viserys from King's Landing, right? And so
Dragonstone.
Oh, okay. Well, wherever they were at the time. But to be sure, like, it's that time period too. So there might be something going on with that as well.
Yep.
Totally.
Oh, well, and in the Q&A, Tibby has mentions a theory too, which I'll go ahead and read because I don't think it's spoilery. He says, "Any thoughts on the theory Tyrion Lannister is actually the son of Aerys Targaryen, and so perhaps the third dragon rider? His interaction with the dragon seems to point to it." That theory I think has no basis within the show so far. That's not to say they couldn't go that direction, but I don't think the show has done anything to suggest that.
Right.
I think it's a stretch even in the books, which again is not to say that it is impossible.
See, and I was going to actually bring that up when we discussed Tyrion, because I realized something that actually gives that theory water. I have long been against the idea that Tyrion is a secret Targaryen, and that if any of the Lannisters are Targaryens, it's Cersei and Jaime, because I thought it would just be more poetic.
Well, and then the whole twins thing is a running theme with the Targaryens, too.
Exactly. And there's long been theories and discussions about whether or not Tywin could actually produce offspring and things like that.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be very poetic that Tyrion would be Tywin's only real heir.
Yeah.
But something does happen, and I think we can just save it for when we get to Tyrion. But something happens that in this episode that makes me go, okay, wait a minute, this might actually hold water. So.
It never occurred to me. I didn't watch for it. I didn't catch a thing.
The thing is,
other than the physical changes and the differences that he has.
I think that especially if we're talking about the show and limiting it to the show, you would have to be leaning way into it to pick up on this theory, because even as it stands, I think even thinking about it in this framework, you still have to kind of squint your eyes and lean in, just like, maybe. But that's not to say it couldn't be true. I'm just saying that the show has not really given us
they'll have to catch us up.
Much in the way of clues to support that. The books have more, but still nothing definitive. And it could be just interpretations.
Yeah. I do want to go back, though. I think it was Sheriff Bullock, and I frequently agree with him, but I don't think that the flashbacks are a time waster at all. I think it's almost like total fan service, like who read the books and didn't go Hodor swoon, just like he's talking and he's clever because he knew that fighting technique, and it was just, it was totally... I wish it could have lasted longer. Like Bran, I was like, I don't want to leave either. It was just,
and there's so much we can dissect from that also, because he actually picks up a sword, whereas in modern day, the idea of picking up a sword will make him cry.
Yeah.
He's so afraid of violence now.
Right. Yeah, I remember it was, I guess, season 4, somebody had said if he ever learned to fight, he'd be unstoppable. I don't remember who it was who said it, but it was echoed. It's echoed again.
Nan said it last night.
OSHA.
Oh, maybe it was.
I think maybe it was.
It was before Bran
also
Ward.
The one who said he's got giant's blood in him.
Oh yeah, when she saw him naked.
And it's both of those are. I think you're right on both counts that it was OSHA that said both of those things, as opposed to it being Ned. Yeah. Or I think Benjen said he's got giant's blood in him because the implication was I don't want to have to spar with him because he's got giant's blood in him and I'm scared. But I think it was also Ned saying to Nan if he learned how to fight he'd be unstoppable, because she was trying to say no, he can't. But yeah, I like the flashbacks. I'm very happy to see the flashbacks, and I am excited to find out what the impact of the current story is going to be, because I'm certain there will be one.
And,
now, a little out of the episode, there's been not speculation. There's been actual interviews where the producers have said that the last 2 seasons are probably going to be truncated, that one's probably only going to be 7 episodes, one's going to be 6. They said where they're at right now in the writing process, they feel like after this season's complete, there's really only 13 episodes left. So, yeah. So they would split that into 2 seasons. So I could see them using this as something to accelerate things, to get exposition in, and a really a way that really pays off. Getting to see these characters come alive as younger, or characters we've never seen, we've only heard of, being able to see them if they go way back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But, I mean,
I
do you
don't
really
know.
think that HBO is going to let go of the cash cow? I mean, maybe this is also setting the scene for like another series of characters at different ages, because the history that George wrote is so very rich, and the religions, in my opinion, are so very rich that they could do a whole just spin-off series practically of it.
Mm-hmm.
No, then
But I
they said,
don't know
well,
about that
we'll make
either.
it clear.
It's,
We're not done writing. We'll make it clear. So it could. You never know. But right
yeah.
now, this is
Mm-hmm.
where we're at, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah, I
So,
would like I'm open to the idea of maybe there being a spin-off series or something to tell about a different time period or whatever. But
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of shows that were great but ultimately tarnished by running too long.
Exactly. I
Mhm.
totally agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. One other
yeah.
thing I did want to note is when I believe it's Leaf says to Mira, he isn't going to stay here forever.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
when I read the books, I thought that's Bran's destination. He's not going anywhere. So
Yeah.
that was a huge surprise to me.
Same here, because I mean, the three-eyed raven is like grown into the tree. Like he's
Mhm.
not going
Yeah.
anywhere. Certainly not physically.
Yeah.
And I thought that the whole deal was that like Bran's being traced, tapped to ultimately replace this guy is my
Mm-hmm.
impression. And the
Yeah.
whole thing of like you won't walk but you will fly, I thought was just like metaphorical in terms of you're going to be warging into all sorts of stuff. And seeing through it, but I had always assumed that he was basically there forever.
Oh, I hope
Um,
not.
well, I mean, it's just I wasn't rooting for that exactly.
Oh,
It's
no, I
more
know. It's
yeah,
just a sad thought.
yeah.
I thought it was a great thought because he was going to become this epic figure, this supernatural figure that
Oracle.
is, yeah, the Oracle. He was going to replace in my mind, he was going to replace the three-eyed raven and be the next generation of the living person within the tree, and he would have access to the past and the future, and he would see the world
Mm,
and be part of the magic of the world, and essentially live maybe not forever but a lot longer than he ever would as just a human, and be able to do so much more. Like, I saw it as such an uplifting thing that I
hmm
was rooting for this.
Yeah, like it was his destiny. Like
Yeah.
that
I
was like the
just,
way to be free of his physical limitations.
Yeah.
in a sense, yeah, but it's also a life in isolation. And he
Hmm
was vibrant before the fall. He wanted to climb things. He wanted to be out and doing
Yeah.
things and with other people. And it sounds, I mean, sure, you've got access to all the knowledge of the known universe, but if he never sees another human again,
Yeah.
fuck that.
Right. But yeah,
Yeah.
I thought that was definitely a bombshell to me in the sense of was it's not only is it a maybe it's a there seems to be a plan he is definitely not going to.
Hmm.
But then again, it also might be that they're just foreseeing a Luke Skywalker leaving Dagobah early sort of deal.
Maybe. Maybe.
But I also just liked a check-in with Mira and a
Yeah.
recognition of like she doesn't really have a lot to do while he's doing all of these visions. And just given what we know of her character, that would be like not only is she lost her brother, but now she has nothing to do but sit around and think about it all day. No
Yep.
one else to talk to
While
except
she's staring at the place that he died.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
She's got a right to be bitter, that's for sure.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah. Ready to jump into Castle Black?
Yes.
Yeah, it's time to come out. The guys are holed up, the ones who are loyal to John. And I lost my place. Davos knows just what to say.
Yeah.
I'm horrible
He
with the
was
sword
so
or
funny.
whatever, so sorry you have to see this.
I want to ask a question, and
Yeah.
this ties into some of the other stuff he does too, that I'm a little bit unsure about. I continue to love Davos deeply. But two things that he does on John's behalf that, like, first of all, he's willing to basically fight to the death on John's behalf, like, not even to save John, but like, well, kind of sort of to save John, because maybe he thinks Melisandre can bring him back, but also later engaging Melisandre, and not even just asking her the question, but having to talk her into it.
Yeah.
All to save
Convince her.
John, when I'm just feeling like, okay, yeah, he liked and respected John, but he's kind of going above and beyond here in a way that didn't entirely feel earned to me.
I agree.
I think what we're seeing is possibly maybe this is the Onion Lord Davos that we see. Instead of being respectful and patient and doing what he's told, he's like, fuck this, I'm going and I'm doing, because everybody that's been in power before him has made such terrible, tragic mistakes that he's warned them against. I think he kind of has earned the right to say screw this and grab, the destiny himself. And it worked. I mean, we've had the resurrection and such, but I think that we're seeing now that, like, remember from the books, Christiana and Nutty will remember from the books, there was at least one entire chapter in his POV from when he was stranded after the Blackwater, and he was with all the other dead soldiers and boats and everything just washed aside, and this little tiny patch of rock he landed on, and he was stranded and starving and all of these things before he was found. You got a little taste of that when they did show him, but I think that is like the Onion Knight, and I think that we're seeing him wake up now and kind of take the reins, and I kind of cheer him for it, because Stannis was an idiot. John was naive, bless his heart, and whatever he is now. The Thorn, is Alistair Thorn, is that the Lord Commander that they just had the rebellion against? It's just like all the people that he's been trying to talk to and make sense to, they're just caught up in all these other things, like, I want to be king, that's the most important thing. And it's almost like I think Tyrion would be if he had been born of full stature and the ability to be a knight, or someone like that. I think they've got a similar kind of ethics and morals, and whether he's right or wrong in making those choices for John, being resurrected for one thing, like Melisandre said it right, if you want to help him, leave him dead. He was going through a lot when he was alive, and who knows what this is going to bring. She has an idea because she saw Beric Dondarrion.
Yep.
But who knows?
I just feel like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nutty.
I just wanted to say I agree. I think that we haven't seen why he's going out on such a limb. I think honestly, the Onion Knight would have snuck everybody out of there and would have escaped.
Yeah.
He's definitely more about fleeing and sneaking and smuggling and that sort of thing. I could see reasons that he would feel this way, but we haven't seen them on screen. Like, for instance, he's lost all of his sons, although I think he only has one in the show. John is of the age that his son was. Might be identifying in that way. But we haven't seen it on screen, so we don't know if that's it. We still don't know, and I still don't believe he knows that Shireen is dead. And does he know that Stannis is dead? He may, it may be about the fact that he really does believe that John is their only hope and that the wall is important to this. But we have no way of knowing because there's nothing on screen. It's just Davos decided to be a hard ass, and kudos for him, but I don't know why he did it.
Yeah.
Was he at Hardhome?
No.
But he's okay.
Davos?
So he's definitely seen the giant. I don't know if he's seen the.
Yeah, I mean, he saw the
zombies,
wildlings come through the gate just like everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
that's the only motivation I could think of is if he knows what's on the other side of the wall, knows what's coming, knows John is.
Well, he was there when Melisandre said, "We've got to forget this and we got to go to the wall because worse stuff's happening there."
Yeah, so I guess my
Right.
issue is that there could be lots of reasons
Hmm.
that we can read into, and if we speculate about it, we could think, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that,
You're right.
and that's fine, except that the show hasn't told us any of
Mhm.
that. We haven't seen any of it in the show, and that's what I meant when I said it felt unearned, especially when we're talking about, okay, I am about to now fight to the death for this guy
Yeah.
who is already dead. That
A little
just felt
contrived.
to me like I don't understand why he felt like that was his job. But at the same time, like I still love the character. But and then on top of that, he all along he had been the one who was totally against Melisandre's magic. Like he was the one that advised Stannis against it. It was like, even if it helps you win, do you want to win that way? And so like for him to be the one pressuring her to do it, especially when it's like he didn't see Beric Dondarrion raised from the dead, she did. And so it just all of that felt weird in a way that like I'm not, you know, I'm not protesting, I'm not mad.
You
But
don't
I
have to justify it,
yeah.
honey. It
Well,
makes
I just
sense.
want to I guess
I
I just
didn't.
want to illustrate that my complaint is only that I think it was not handled as well as it could have been maybe, but I wanted to say that without coming across like, oh, this is ruining the show, or I don't like Davos now, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a nitpick, and I think that it's a completely valid one. I think him pushing her for the magic is showing that he's desperate. We just don't know why is he so desperate.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
But for the second episode, we got ghost time. We got to see a dire wolf.
So
Mhm.
are we talking about the resurrection now?
I was just saying that they showed
Well, we haven't showed the
dire
wildlings
wolf.
coming in yet, even.
Oh yeah. Okay.
No, they showed a dire wolf at the first scene. I thought that's what we were talking about.
I don't want to jump the gun. So the they're ready to kill him. The everything's about to throw down. They're banging on the door, and then they stop. And my next notes are 1-1
Hmm.
Ed, and I was very happy.
Yeah. I was super happy with how that turned out, just because I think, I even said this last time, that one of the things that I was a little bit unsure about was this idea of, oh yeah, we're going to go get the wildlings, and I'm thinking, and what, just kill all of the remaining crows? Like, ultimately, like, what is the end game here? We're going to leave only the wildlings in charge of Castle Black? What does that mean? So that's a little bit what I was worried about. And so the resolution of, oh no, it's just that there's so few crows and enough wildlings showing up that it's just kind of like, no, you guys just stop. And then also, this is where the seeds they sowed last week of showing that some of the other members in the Night's Watch were already unhappy about this turn of
Right.
events.
Yeah.
Right.
And so to have it be clear that it's like, no, it's not all of them. And so a lot of them are suddenly not willing to fight the wildlings and die for Thorn
Yeah.
because they're already a little unsure. And so I kind of liked that the idea is that it was really only a small handful of them that were insisting on fighting, and that way you can kind of say, yeah, let's put them in the cells. Everybody else, this is a new plan. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
good, we're good. All right.
Well,
It
it's
shows
actually
mob mentality, how it's all about inertia, right? You get one person leading the charge, everybody starts following it. But if you change the direction, most of the mob is going to change direction.
well. Are you back, Chooch? Can you say things?
Oh no, no audio.
I can if I didn't mute it because I was worried of I was worried I was interrupting people because it was cutting in and out, and I didn't want to just have these random words drop in. Yeah, so my note was, so again, the bulk of them just seem to go with whatever, which I think is kind of how it works out. Some are don't quite know what to think. And like you said, you have that little core that does something, and everybody else isn't quite sure, so they just kind of go along with it. And
Yeah.
obviously, with the wildlings, there's what could they do? They could all die. That's what they could do. That's all they could do.
I mean, the wildlings actually, they just came from hard home and they saw what's coming. And so the brothers, the Black brothers, they don't really believe it. They are still kind of, well, yeah, there's some weird stuff. And some of the guys came back from that one when they went looking for Benjen, and they talked about weird stuff, but grumpkins and whatever.
Yeah.
So
There
I
are
think,
giants and elephants, but zombies? Come on.
yeah, it's so honestly right now the realm is in way better hands because they've seen what happened to the rest of their entire community, like everything. It's like as if the United States, like the upper states or something, because there were so many different clans and so many different regions up there, and they're all just now,
Mm-hmm.
sad.
The whole way that the scene played, the one guy who's the last crossbow bolt into one's shoulder, and just how that all plays out was amazing. Because on the one hand, it plays as funny, which is
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
To have kind of a moment of some, dark humor, levity there, but also just illustrating how scary it would be to actually try to fight a giant in that kind of circumstance. It's one thing when you're, shooting flaming arrows at him from 700 feet away.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole other thing when
and he
he's
can't
right
get at
there.
you. But when he's right there, he kind of just grabs you and smashes you against the wall, and that's it.
Anybody else think puny god?
Yeah.
No, I was too busy going, ew. But I mean, it's as at least as effective as the leaving the sploosh mark of his brains on the wall is kind of as effective as leaving those little tarred, burned kids' bodies that Theon did and Ramsay having all the flayed people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, hey, remember what happened? That right there, still here.
So they arrest what we feel, or at least what I feel, are the true traitors.
Mm-hmm.
And Tormund goes to visit John, pay his respects, and I like how he goes out. Better leave. Got a lot of bodies to burn. Hint, hint.
Saying the one thing we talked about last week.
Yeah.
One brief note. I was looking up just to confirm a couple of things about what the deal was with Davos last time. You see, he definitely did not go to Hardhome, although there was a scene where he was basically respecting and backing up John's plan to go rescue wildlings at Hardhome when a lot of other people thought, it's like, why bother, who cares? And then also at least in this write-up that I've found here, it basically, when Melisandre returned, John and Davos rushed to her, asking about the fates of Stannis and Shireen. Melisandre regards Davos with an empty stare, confirming his worst fears, which is a bit of an interpretation of that scene, but it sounds like what the show might be going with is that she told them that Davos and Shireen were all, that they're all dead, but maybe did not provide additional detail.
Yeah, I felt like I felt like it was clear what she was relaying to him. It didn't occur to me that he wouldn't know that Stannis or Shireen are both dead.
There's no way he would still be supporting her, though, if he knew that she had Shireen burned. I just can't imagine that he would even... I think he would have demanded she be executed or something. Or I don't know. But at the same time, again, just this idea that he's now pushing her to do more of her magic.
If he knew it was her idea or that she was burned at all, probably he wouldn't be giving her that pep talk.
Yeah. It's one thing to say they lost the battle and they were all killed. They're all dead. It's another thing to say, oh, but before that happened, guess what? Yeah.
This crazy thing happened.
I thought that was going to work out great. Turned out, not so much.
If we finish out King's Land or Castle Black, we jump immediately to Davos inspiring Melisandre. and how I think Christiana covered quite well, and who don't quite. It does feel a little contrived. I think that feeds into why it felt rushed to me. The whole episode felt rushed to me. That all of a sudden he's pushing. Have you ever tried? Like, let me whip up a little ritual real quick.
Honestly, though, like, again, I don't want to get snarky about it, really, because I don't really feel dismissive of it. But it did occur to me that when he said, "Have you ever tried?" She could have said, "I don't know. Have you?"
Right?
Why you just assume that, like, oh, well, the only reason you can't bring people back from the dead is you haven't tried.
I hope we get more reasoning on his desperation.
Yeah. I could imagine if, depending on what John is like now that he's alive again, we might have Davos and John talk about that.
Yeah. So she performs a ritual, they give up, and as expected,
Ghost perks up.
Wakes up.
Yeah.
Ghost notices first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's my deal. When I watched that scene, all I could think, and this has to do with the theory that I had from the books, but John just warged from Ghost back into his own body now that Melisandre made it able to host him again.
Interesting.
And I know the books don't really cover the Starks warging that much, but in the books, it is heavily implied that most, if not all, of the Stark children can warg. And that's all I could think was everybody leaves the room, Ghost wakes up before John does. So he went from sleeping to, I can go back in my body now.
Right. That'd be interesting.
Well, and his eyes were closed by Ed? No.
Yeah, Ed did it.
Ed previously, so we don't know what his eyes look like because when they
were
warg,
blue.
their eyes were black, right?
No, we saw
At
his
least they weren't
his
blue.
eyes when he was
Yeah.
dead before Ed closed them.
Right, I'm just saying that after, like, when you're saying that she made the body possible to host him again, and then Ghost wakes up, that maybe, that kind of made sense with that, but never mind.
Yeah, I think the eyes rolling in the back of the head only really matters when they're alive. The reason I believe that John may have warged into Ghost when he died is that something had happened with another character in the books that just before he dies, he wargs into his eagle. Or was it an eagle or a hawk or something?
Was it Oral from earlier in the...
We had talked about it when it happened.
Yeah, so there's definitely a thread in the books about how wargs sometimes, if their human body is about to die, will do like a last-ditch taking over of an animal, or even perhaps attempting to do it to a person. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see.
Well, Oral's death kind of reinforces that because, you could say that the bird that he was warging into felt the rage and hated John. But if he did warg into it, then he would pick John's eyes out.
Yeah.
He'd knock him off the wall.
I have to say, as this scene was going, because they lingered on John for so long, and then when they panned down, I thought what she did caused him to go into Ghost. I thought that's how they were going to handle it. It didn't make sense, but that's half what I was expecting till it.
I always thought that it was an interesting idea for him to go into Ghost, and they may still have what Nutty suggested, the idea that somehow Ghost was able to
host him
for a while, and then
transporter buffer.
Back. But I had never thought that the idea of he's just going to live as Ghost now. I never quite bought that because at least from the perspective of a show, what does that mean? You still don't have the actor there, or what? You're going to have he's going to be like Al in Quantum Leap. He's going to walk around and nobody else can see him or something. I don't know.
Just because he's hot.
I would love it. I would love it to morph into Wilfred.
Yeah, but the
John in a wolf suit. Kit Harington in a wolf suit. Oh, that would be brilliant.
But yeah, so I don't know. We might have him.
I can't escape the image now. Thanks,
They
Chooch.
can certainly talk about when he talks about whatever he perceived. it would be interesting because we do remember that what Beric Dondarrion said, and this actually left Melisandre somewhat disconcerted at the time, was that there wasn't anything; it was just nothing while he was dead.
Yeah.
So it was, alive, nothing, alive again. So it would be interesting to see if that was Jon's experience too, or if maybe he was in Ghost and he could say that.
I thought.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, finish your thought.
I was just going to mention another thing, which is that I saw a fun GIF online today that basically intercut this whole sequence from the episode with the part of Apollo 13 where the capsule is coming through that period where they can't get the radio signals and everyone's waiting to hear, and it intercut them expertly, and it was amazing especially because there's a couple of bits in that one where there's a couple of pops on the radio, and so the really smart people in the room know that might mean something, so they kind of perk up before everybody else does, and that's intercut with Ghost lifting up his head, and it's great. Should go in the meme roundup if you're still doing those, Nutty.
Very cool.
So I thought, for me, I'm such a visual person. I was, of course, the whole time I watched it 3 times so that I'd be able to remember it all. But all 3 times I watched it, the stone on Melisandre's necklace never changed. It stayed dark the entire time. I actually liked the ritual that she put together. All the only guidance that she has that we know of is what Thoros said, which is that I just said the words. I didn't do anything special. And so maybe she knew of the ritual because she certainly knew about the king's blood and the leeches and the fire and all that stuff. I really thought it was a believable ritual, rushed as it was. But I mean, there would be words for that any priest or priestess would learn.
Speaking
Why
of
else
sorry.
I was thinking that Jon finally gets another haircut after the first episode.
I was going to mention that too, just because especially that was part of what I was talking about earlier with the showrunners messing with us, because there was the whole thing about is he dead? Is he really dead? And then fans speculating about has Kit Harington cut his hair?
Mm-hmm.
Because
There's been pictures of him in Belfast with long hair.
Yeah.
And speaking of the words, though. The screenwriter of the episode, or someone, I'm not sure who did it, posted what the English translation of her prayer is. And it's just 3 lines, so I'll read it now. It's, "We ask the Lord to shine his light and lead a soul out of darkness. We beg the Lord to share his fire and light a candle that has gone out. From darkness, light, from ashes, fire, from death, life."
Nice.
What is dead may never die.
And his name is death. And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
Sorry.
Still miss him.
Quite a
Didn't
parallel.
have him long enough to miss him as much.
Yeah, we got a lot of religious stuff in this episode coming up, though.
Yeah.
There was one other thing I was going to mention about this. Oh, just what we should, we'll come back to this because it happens later in the episode, but just while we're still talking about Melisandre, and especially her King's Blood leech spell, with Balon dead now, that is the 3rd death that she
Oh my God!
in
You're
that
right.
spell. Because the 3 leeches were for Robb, Joffrey, Balon. And that's actually part of what was weird for the book readers, is because this death of Balon happened a way long time ago.
It did. It did. It happened so long ago.
It would have been season 3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I think it happened before Robb.
Yeah.
So it was weird that it didn't happen for so long. But now that it has, this means that the 3 leeches have now done their job. Although, given that we see, we'll talk more about what happens to Balon.
We can jump straight to Pike. I don't know that we have to stay in order here.
Well, just before we do that, real quick, that what Christiana had said, with the timing of everything, led me to something that I had read. Apparently, since season 3, the reveal of Melisandre being a crone was supposed to be written in since season 3, and they kept pushing it off. They were going to put it in season 3, but it just didn't fit with the story, so they pushed it off for season 4. Didn't work again for story, pushed it off till season 5. So they kept pushing that back. So it makes me wonder, like, how many things did they want to open up? Like, maybe they wanted to say, okay, well, now is the time that Balin should die. Yeah, but we're not quite ready to tell that story, so let's just push it back. So it definitely shows you a little bit of the jiggery pokery and how they have to change things just because it's on screen, right? Like, you're not going to start a whole storyline 3 seasons early because it was in the books and then ignore that story for all that time. So
Yeah,
I
I guess we'll see
interesting to point out.
if they touch base back on that, or if it was a throwaway and they never reveal why we care that she's an old crone.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting to see.
Yeah.
So
So
we
do
can
we
go
want-
to King's Landing or jump to Pike.
Let's
I
do
want to
Pike.
go to.
Oh, well, okay. If you want to, whichever one you want to go to, Viv, that is fine. We'll cover both, I'm sure.
I had a question that I'm going to forget if I don't ask, and that's why I'm
Go for it.
afraid.
Yeah.
So it's about the scene with Cersei, and what I thought was, like, in the first scene that we saw was Hodor and the mention of Giant's blood. The second scene of the episode was Castle Black with the brain paintbrush on the castle wall by the giant. Do we have any reference of the mountain as having any giant's blood in him, or is he just abnormally large? Because I was like, 3 things, one scene after the other with gigantic men,
Yeah.
or giant referenced men, or gigantic men like the mountain is. But I mean, he was a Clegane, so
Mhm.
he wasn't like, I don't know what the bastard title would be from wherever they were, but
Mhm.
he had a last name and it was the same as his brother, so I guess
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense for him to have giant's blood.
I don't remember them
Well,
ever
I would have
alluding.
had to go way back. But I think sometimes when people are saying, like, in this world, when people say someone has giant's blood in them, it might be kind of just a figure of speech, and they don't necessarily mean
Totally.
it literally.
I just
Unless
caught
it's
the
Osha
pattern of
or-
3 in a row.
Yeah.
That's all. That's why I was asking.
Oh, well, you know,
Yeah.
Chooch has a point that when Osha says it, she knows for a fact that giants are real. But most other people would think that those are just stories.
Yeah.
So,
But
so
yeah,
that's how
we did have
King's Landing
the.
opens.
There's no
Sir
record.
Strong.
I'm sorry. There's no record of Gregor Clegane being mentioned of being a giant.
Okay, that's what I
Other than,
thought, and I'm
being
glad
called-
you confirmed it.
Sir Robert being called a silent giant. Other than that, it's just.
They haven't called him anything yet, though, have they? They haven't introduced the
Um,
name Sir Robert Strong on the show.
I think they did when
When
Introduced
Cersei
him,
met him,
yeah.
right?
Cersei up after. So when Cersei
Yeah.
had
First of
just
his
come
name, yeah.
from her walk of shame, that's the first time we see him in his Kingsguard armor. I think they did say it then.
Oh, gotcha.
Mhm. Yeah, so he said first of his name,
Hmm.
promises to serve his queen, not serve the realm or serve anybody else but the queen. Jennifer fusses, they haven't had giants around for a while. Well, yeah, the South hasn't, for sure. So we have the rando talking about sex with Cersei, and then Frankenmountain, flop, showing.
Yeah.
He
Man.
doesn't really need to draw that sword to have an impact.
Boy,
So to speak.
it's funny for an episode that has 2 separate scenes of a really big person just smashing somebody's
That's
head
what I'm
against the wall.
saying. It's why it totally got my attention.
Yeah, no, it
So
feels
dramatic.
like it feels intentional in a way that's not clear why necessarily, except that it's awesome and effective in both cases.
True.
Scary to be sure.
Yeah.
I mean, especially one of the things that struck me as odd though with this scene about the mountain is the idea of like how did he know? Like, did someone tip off one of Cersei's spies and she sent him? Was he skulking around
Just
somewhere?
strolling by.
There's something supernatural going on. Like, how did this happen? Like,
Yeah.
when I rewatched it, I was specifically looking during the scene where he tells his story to see if there was any obvious, like, someone, you know, looking at him like, oh, I'm going to tell Cersei about this or something like that. There's a waitress who kind of gives him a look of disgust, but that's about it.
What were you going to say, Chooch?
Yeah. I was just gonna say if it's a supernatural thing or something, because they said, you know, he gave a vow to defeat all the queen's enemies or whatever.
And he won't
Before he gives
speak
a
until
vow of
then.
silence, right? He's gonna be busy if it's everybody who
Pissed her
says
off.
something naughty or makes up a
Right.
story about her blowing him, because that's got to be all over the kingdom, and or at least all
After
over King's
that walk of
Landing
shame.
after the walk, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's just
Yeah.
it's kind
But
of weird.
how? But it was just a spy? I mean, I don't know if
Right.
this is a thing in the story or if they're just...
I guess we'll see. Maybe he'll do one per episode. Just
Yeah.
Well, it's
randomly.
it's absolutely terrifying, the fact that we didn't see it coming, though. Because it was like, well, what's this? This is like a throwaway splash. Okay, all right. He's up and in motion.
Yeah.
He's at work.
I loved, though, that, first of all, when we see Cersei, we have that fascinating little moment where she pulls a thread out of her sleeve. It's just such a small moment, but it also feels just like
Yeah.
where her head's at right now, is that she is kind of not producing constructive activity, but at the same, like, she's not especially coherent. Like, she doesn't have a cogent plan at the moment, except that she's doing things.
Yeah.
Like, whatever's in
Right.
front of her, she's trying to do. Like,
Yeah.
she sees a thread, pulls it out, because, you know, doesn't...
One foot in front of the other.
Right. But then when she turns around, because he comes in, she specifically notices that in the same spot as she just pulled the thread from her sleeve, he had blood on his gauntlet.
Yeah.
And she noticed it, and it wasn't a smile exactly, but there was definitely a sort of good.
Yeah, it was like an acknowledgement for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was interesting. But I liked. I'm kind of skipping ahead. I really felt like this sequence with her, this sequence of scenes with her, this one and the one with Tommen later, and a lot of this may be my own perceptions of the character sneaking in as opposed to things that are literally shown on screen. But again, she felt still, in this early scene, unfocused. Like, she's at a loss, she doesn't really know what to do, she's very angry and frustrated but doesn't know where to focus it at the moment.
She doesn't have a direction, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's where the, like, pulling the thread is coming. But I felt like then Tommen comes to her and basically says, I was wrong, I'm so sorry, teach me to be like you. And then, has everyone seen Batman vs. Superman?
No.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Have you heard Wonder Woman's music?
No.
No.
Oh, man.
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
It's basically angry Amazon Viking music, and it's,
Right on.
and just I sort of felt like I heard that in my head when Tommen said that, and just this like,
Yeah.
all right, you've just given her this direction now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you put her back in control.
Well, in a way that she never was before, not even with Joffrey, though, because she knew that her dad was there and tugging at him, and then Marjorie had her way of getting with Tommen, like, under her spell, and this is the first time that nobody's in her way counseling the king opposite of her. It's literally just her, and it's like, I thought that it was very appropriate, his behavior when he saw her, and like he said he wanted to keep her safe by keeping her out of the sept, but to me it was more like the way a young child would react when they're in trouble. Well, I'm going to put off seeing my parent as long as I can because I'm in trouble. And it was just very childlike, and as soon as his daddy, Jamie, questioned him on it, he crumbled, and then he didn't even get the whole thing out to Cersei before he's apologizing, and he's just ashamed, and he really does say this whole teach me thing. And I just, after everything that she's been through and done and seen, is she gonna is she going to alter the way that she, like, would she raise him the same way as Joffrey and make him that cruel? Has she learned anything? Because she really has not said anything substantive since she's come back.
Yeah.
You
I
don't
took it
really
as
know where her mind is at. She was silent on the walk home and silent when she met Sir Robert Strong, and she really has not said a whole lot, and it's just it's got me wondering what she's got simmering underneath the surface and what she's actually going to do. I'm sure it's got to be evil because it's Cersei, and she's got a lot of revenge right now and rage, and she's got nothing. Marjorie can't stop her. Nobody is between her and what she wants, and it's terrifying to kind of imagine how they're going to play with that, you know.
One brief note is that they haven't shown him this season, but in theory, Kevin, Tywin's brother, Kevin, is still around, and he's the one that's kind of been the regent directing Tommen in the meantime. But he hasn't shown up in this season yet, but theoretically he's still there also advising Tommen. And so at the same time, though, Tommen has now just come to her and basically said, I want to listen to you.
The other stuff isn't working, Yeah,
so even if Kevin is still around, she's got leverage now in a way that she had felt it was lost before. And the only other thing that we'd had her say was when she was talking with Jaime about worrying about the prophecy and was it fate now that they were all going to die. But I felt like after this scene with Tommen, it was her deciding that she agrees with Jaime, fuck the prophecy, fuck fate.
Yeah. I think that she has his power again. He's coming to her, like you said. So to me, it's strap in, here we go. And I think she feels probably that he does need a little of his brother in him, you know? And he just came out and said, I was weak, I didn't know what to do, I didn't and teach me to be strong. And she probably does see strength and not necessarily cruelty, but, you know, kind of cold-bloodedness as one and the same.
Yeah.
So, Talon had said in the Q&A he could go around, the mountain could go around, or sorry, Sir Strong, eradicating sparrows. But then Pot says, wouldn't people getting walled after publicly dissing Cersei soon result in fewer people publicly saying anything about the king's mother? You think.
Sounds kind of like what Trump's going to do, right? He's going to try and silence the reporters. I'm sorry. No politics, sorry.
He said it. And then Talon had said it's her and, I think she's meaning Cersei. It's her and the sparrow who convinced Tommen initially that Cersei might be prohibited from entering the Sept.
She means the High Septon. He convinced Cersei that, because he said that he had to prevent her because they said that she wasn't allowed, and he didn't want to see his mother get arrested again.
Right.
He wouldn't be allowed into the Sept, and he was saying to the public.
I'm just saying that who's the her? Her and the sparrow convinced Tommen that Cersei might be. But I mean, Jaime, telling Tommen, while I'm around, she will never be arrested again. I think Tommen believes that.
Yeah,
I don't think he realized how much power he had. You know what I mean? Because the sparrows were armed, essentially. But, it's almost like he was afraid to use his big boy voice without someone that he trusted.
Yeah.
I thought just incidentally, in the chat, Chooch, I posted a YouTube link that has that Wonder Woman music in it. I don't know if there's an easy way for you to play it, but
Let's see.
So in any case, though, the stuff with High Sparrow I thought was really interesting this time too, for several reasons. Like the whole conversation with him and Jaime, I thought was really excellent in the sense that it layered several different interesting ideas together. One was Jaime pointing out the hypocrisy of how they arrested her, in particular with the most serious charge being that she slept with her brother. And he's like,
Yeah, bring
Nothing
it.
for me? Got nothing for me? I killed the king. I killed the last king when I was his king's
I
guard.
killed my
Nothing-
cousin. I killed
nothing.
my king.
Yeah, so him pointing that out, I thought was really kind of like, I liked him being called and him really not even offering any answer for that.
No, he didn't even acknowledge it,
It
really.
made me nervous
Yeah.
for Jamie, though.
hmm Well, because the response of when he threatens the sparrow, this is something Jamie hasn't dealt with before, which is someone who really actually seems okay with, it's like, well, sure, you'd kill me, and then, they'd kill you. Maybe you'd take a bunch of them with you, but who cares about how many of them it was? It was still the sparrows that took you down.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
I think without him, the sparrows fall apart. I think it's a bluff, it seems like this has to lead to something bigger, that it can't just be you kill him and that's it. But I just don't see Fanatics holding on without him as their leader.
the problem is, though, this is the power they have. Because on the one hand, yeah, Jamie against 50 of them, they might take him down. But if
Totally. He doesn't have his usual sword hand.
Right. But if Jamie goes back and then Tommen says, okay, Lannister army, let's just root these guys out, they could do it in a heartbeat. The problem is, this is a very religious city where the legitimacy of the throne is on the premise that they are blessed by the seven, the gods, right? And so if they were to take their army and attack in the High Sept, the Great Sept, and to kill the leaders of the church, that would not go well for them, and that would just militarize and radicalize people who weren't already doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that when Jamie starts pointing out, what about me? What about all these things that I've done? It's almost like he was echoing what we said last week in the sense of, why are they only going after women and a gay guy?
Yeah.
Why aren't they going after Jamie? Why aren't they going after any of the men? It's very calculated what they're doing, and taking down Jamie does not further their cause. It does not work for them. I was actually a bit anxious that Jamie wasn't going to be allowed to leave the Sept, but then they let him, and I was like, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting. That's an interesting point, just because I was talking to someone yesterday who had watched the episode and was left with the impression, no, they arrested him. They took him into custody.
Huh.
And I was like, oh, that doesn't seem right. I don't remember it that way. So I watched it, when I rewatched it today with this specific question in mind, it is left ambiguous. My take is still that they were going to let him leave. But it's unclear because all of the guys with their weapons are still standing around in the circle around him. And Jamie does not move. He stands there in the spot, and it cuts away without him
You're
having
right,
gone.
yeah.
High Sparrow walks away. Jamie stands there, and everybody's still around him, and that's where the scene ends.
Yeah.
So it's not 100% clear.
It's definitely ambiguous. I'm hoping that Jamie's still out, but I don't know. We'll see. Although I do think that if they did arrest Jamie and somehow got Jamie to confess that he and his sister were having relations, which I think Jamie would be more willing to confess, that would actually screw them, because they absolved Cersei of her sins.
No,
The
remember,
ones that she confessed.
only for sleeping with Lancel.
Okay.
Because
But
she
what-
refused to
but
confess to Jamie.
They let her go on that without confessing to sleeping with her brother, is what I mean, though.
Because there was still
Right.
going to be a trial for that.
Oh.
Yeah.
They let her out until the trial.
Yeah. That's why she's in the
Okay.
Red Keep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe that's why they wouldn't arrest him, because then it would contradict things that they had said. But all right,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, none of them can confess. Like, it's in nobody's interest for anyone to confess that right now, because like the Sparrows might want it, but if either of them were to confess it, that means Tommen is no longer rightful king, which doesn't even work out for Marjorie, because you know, if Tommen isn't king, then she isn't queen.
And she's married to an abomination.
Yeah.
Any other King's Landing business?
I don't think so.
I've got the music.
The oh boy, you know, the Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap, oh boyness, that comes after Tommen asks Cersei for help. That's all I put down. I'm just like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have the Wonder Woman music, Chooch?
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just that initial opening electric guitar.
Right on.
It's just that I kind of heard that in my head when she was when he's like, "Yes, teach me to be strong like you," and I felt like at that point is when she was kind of saying, "Okay, I can work with this. I can work with this. All right, let's get the wheels turning again."
Nice. And let's jump over the narrow sea to Marine. It's over
Aww.
the narrow sea, right? On the other side of the continent.
Yeah.
With
Did it
Danny's
right,
small
that's why I
council.
liked it.
Thanks. With Danny's small council, essentially, getting some news of what's been going on in her absence. It has not been good. Similar, or things have essentially all gone back to normal, except for Marine itself. All the slavers are back in business.
Yeah.
Well, what is good though is Tyrion having a new MVP line for the series, which is, "That's what I do. I drink and I know things."
I love it. It's perfect.
Destined for 1,000 T-shirts.
Exactly. Chooch, get on that.
That's what I do, yeah. And so anything about that conversation? I thought it was all pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
A great speech, obviously, when he goes down there.
Oh my God, so good.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
I got goosebumps during that scene with the dragons. It was amazing.
So powerful.
My only quibble is very at the end when they just kind of withdraw into the shadows, and I'm thinking, what, do they have a way out there, or they're just, no, okay, we're taking the chains off, but they're staying in the cave? I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, I thought the same thing too, but if I remember correctly, they had a way in there, so that must be the same way out. That there's like a big garage door or skyscraper.
Right. I thought that was the case
too.
too.
It's all open.
But they didn't show it.
Yeah, they didn't show it, and so that was my only quibble.
I kind of took it as they had the chains taken off and they were just kind of like retreating and processing, and I didn't expect them to like go running through the door, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's
these
where
two.
it's unclear.
These two, no. Drago, though, yeah, he would have mowed right over Tyrion.
I had the impression that it's like, no, we're setting them free, except that the end of the scene is they just pull back into shadow, and I'm like, well, are they free or they're not free? I don't know.
I took it differently. The way Tyrion spoke, I took it as, well, we got to keep them alive. The Dragon Queen needs dragons. I didn't read anything into that about him letting them go.
Well, the point was keeping them confined is what's bad for them. And it's not just the chains, it's the cave.
Yeah.
And his theory is that they're intelligent and that they want to help her, so even if they let them go, they're not just going to like fly away and never come back, because they're smart and they're going to try to do what needs to be done. And so it's tough, because the risk, of course, is that what if they do just fly away and then don't come back, and it's like, well, now she doesn't have any dragons.
Yeah. Well, in the books, the reason that they get let loose is somebody tries to steal them. And so that makes me think that, well, if they fly away and they don't come back, they're still better than having dead dragons.
Yeah.
Because, like,
I guess it's the difference between not having read the books and not expecting the dragons to be free, and that maybe that's where my POV is different. I'm seeing it from Tyrion's point of view of she's a dragon queen, she has to have dragons just like she needed an army and she needed boats. And so my POV, after not having read book 5 yet, was just that, this is because it just made sense to me. It's like when you get a new cat, you put a cat in a small room so they can get used to the smells of the house. Then you open the door to the bathroom and you let them go to the next room. So to me, it kind of made sense in animal logic.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, right. That's the complaint, is that it's left unclear, and this is, it's something that they've had an issue with a little bit this season, which is they're
Even
kind of
this
moving so
episode.
fast that they're skipping some details that seem important. And I'm sure we will find out whether or not they are now free to roam or whether they are still in the cave, just not chained up. Because we could see it a half step of let's keep them close but not chained up before we try letting them go altogether. But it doesn't tell us which. It doesn't. We don't know.
they want
whether
us to
they're
watch
now free or
episode
not.
3, though, Christiana.
Well, right, because you can't have people watch the next episode unless you put some sort of weird cliffhanger on it.
Cliffhangering bastards.
I think I said this already on a previous episode, but I finally gave up on The Walking Dead. I just couldn't do it anymore because they cheat.
Yeah.
They cheat in that show.
Do
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
At least we've got a magic system here that we can, and a religious system that has magic aspects to it that we can.
Mhm.
We can buy the plutonium every once in a while.
So, as Tyrion is walking up to the dragons and as he's doing the whole thing, in my head, I'm like screaming, "Oh God, oh God. They can't have Tyrion replace Quentin," which is a character that in the books thinks that he would have a special bond because there's like ancient Targaryen blood in his body somewhere, and that the dragons will
What?
accept him. Oh, well,
Oh,
'cause
something from the book?
yeah, even
Oh.
even Robert had Targaryen blood. Like most royal houses had Targaryen blood in them. So he's convinced himself that he'll be able to communicate with these dragons, and they burn him alive. They just burn him alive. So suddenly I was scared for Tyrion, which I shouldn't have been, but I was.
Yeah.
And then it made me think, both in the books and the show, Tyrion did not have a single burn from the battle at the Blackwater. He was in the midst of fire,
We talked about all of that when it aired, and he had such little damage.
but he didn't have any burns.
Right.
You'd think there'd be something.
See, I was paying attention because certainly the people who are really hot on this secret Tyrion is a secret Targaryen theory were speculating that, well, maybe the dragons are going to try to burn him and it will work. Like he won't be burned. But I still feel like, okay, it's possible that could be true, but the show has not really given us any solid evidence. You have to work backwards to find anything that supports that theory.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing that I can think of is
Especially if they aren't even introducing that character.
We see him playing with Candleflame quite a bit in the earlier seasons. But then again, I can play with Candleflame and not get burnt, so that's not a big deal.
Well, it's also the thing is, playing with Candleflame, like his mindset in those scenes though is almost more like he kind of wants it to hurt. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But then there was, and this is something from the book, so it's not the show, and I agree that maybe that the show really hasn't established this idea that there are probably secret Targaryens, because there's a whole theme in the books that there could be more Targaryens, we just don't know. But when he was younger, Tyrion used to dream of owning a dragon of his own, going as far as asking his uncles for one as a name day present. He used to start fires in the bowls of Casterly Rock and stared into them for hours, pretending they were dragon flame, while he himself was a lost Targaryen princeling or a dragon lord from Valyria. Sometimes he imagined he saw his father or sister burning in the fires. As he grew older, Tyrion would seldom ever dream of dragons, though he would always remain fascinated by them. So, not only that, Tyrion used to look into fire and see things.
Well, I mean,
I'm not
anybody can
saying
look into fire and see things. It
Targaryen.
doesn't mean he had a vision.
I'm not saying he's a Targaryen, but I got
Yeah.
very excited by different possibilities
Yeah.
of Valyrian.
Clearly a red
See,
priest.
the
It feels like a red herring at this point because the show hasn't done anything with it, kind of like with what we
I
were talking
agree.
about earlier.
And not only that, but the biggest clues that lend credence to this whole theory in the books has just didn't happen in the show. And it's not that it couldn't have, but we never talked about it, and it's too late to do so because it had to do with Tywin. And
Well, yeah. It could,
and so unless they want to cover it in a flashback,
yeah.
which they could, I suppose, but again, because it just didn't happen in the show, I think that whole thing is a red herring, and I agree with Viv. It's cool to talk about and to think about, but that doesn't mean I think it's true.
It is the first time that I've given the theory credence. I've always said, yeah, it could happen, whatever, it could.
I can't.
The first time I've been excited by the theory.
Yeah, I guess I can't. I'm trying so hard to keep up with the things that are happening that I don't even want to go down well, what if no? I've got enough of those right now. There's two things that I'm really scared of happening. I don't need to worry about a third.
All right.
And I also want to just say I love that the dragons need to be free, and I love that they're smart, and I know that they're in the shows. They are definitely a lot smarter than they were in the books, and I dig it.
Yeah. Well, this ties into something that I've been saying for like 3 seasons now, or however long since Danny got to Marine. I guess it's not 3 seasons, but 2 seasons at least, which is that I think the dragons started to misbehave because she's not doing the right thing. They're smart. They know what she needs to be doing, and she is screwing it up by hanging out in Marine, and that's why they start acting out.
Yeah.
And I love Paulette's comment in the Q&A, by the way. She says, I love this scene. Once again, smallest and weakest of Westeros nobles shows he has the biggest balls.
That scene was incredible. All of Tyrion's stuff in this episode was just some of my favorite, like, of the series.
Definitely some of his most powerful moments and words and stuff. It just showed that he really is one of the bravest men in Westeros and smartest. It took a lot to kind of talk his way around those dragons. And also, I think it's cool that in both episodes this season, we've had dragons and direwolves.
Yeah.
We whined a lot in those first couple.
And a giant.
We whined a lot in those first couple seasons. Where's the Dothraki horde? Where are the direwolves? Where are the dragons? Come on, HBO, spend some money. And we've had a horde. We've had dragons. We've had direwolves. So
And a
I just want to see Grumpkins and Snarks now.
Right.
And did you guys see how big the direwolf was?
Yes.
Like, we got clear perspective, direwolf against objects in the room and people.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
Let's jump over to Bravos, another favorite character, Arya playing Say My Name with the waif.
Jacques and Sophie.
Yeah, that just sounds so wrong.
I guess let's say your name.
Yeah, please.
And Jack and Hagar reappearing.
Yes.
So I guess she must believe that she is just a girl. He's always challenged her for lying, right?
What, baby? I just
Sorry,
wanted to hear
I
the rest
guess
of what Chooch had to say.
I guess again, it's a thing where it feels a little rushed. That's like, you're no longer a girl is no longer a beggar. So it's like, he's moving her back in. It seemed like pretty quick, though. We don't really know how long it's been between.
Right, she's pretty trashed.
It was instant.
I'm sorry that I kind of jumped in just because I had something I was really kind of eager to talk about with this scene, which is the nature of what this test is. Because what I read was someone basically kind of snarking the scene away by saying she passes the easiest test ever, in the sense of basically saying it was obvious that it was a test so that she would keep saying a girl has no name so that she could be brought back in. as opposed to like the idea that she knew she was being tested and that's why she didn't say Arya. But they're kind of dismissing it as like not a good test because it was obvious that it was a test. But I was thinking it's like the Kwisatz Haderach. No, not that. I'm sorry. The box from Dune. I don't remember what it's called, but the Bene Gesserit give the box where basically it's not that you don't know it's a test. It's to see if you can resist the animal instinct of you are desperate and blind and in pain and hungry and cold. Can you resist being offered what you want? Can you risk not getting it, even just to say it? Like, so the idea that she knows it's a test and she knows that if she can stay strong, he'll probably bring her back in. Like, as soon as he shows up, she's got to know something's up.
Yeah. Well,
and so the idea that she knew it was a test, I feel like that's no problem at all. Because it's like that. It's like we've made you suffer here, and you have to express that you are willing to continue suffering if you really want this.
Right.
Yeah.
And so because she is willing to, and she does, because if she was panicked and not committed enough for them, then she might just say yes, just give me back my eyes and I'll leave.
Yeah.
But she says she doesn't want that. She is willing to continue doing what she's doing in order for the chance to still go. Because the thing is, it's like if she didn't know it was a test, why would she bother maintaining the whole "a girl has no name" thing? If she didn't think it was a test, it would be like, yes, give me back my eyes.
I thought it was.
She knows it's a test.
I thought it was the perfect test for Arya.
Yeah.
Because it's been her name and it's been her list, and it's been the things that she was focusing on, and that were getting her through dark times. But that's what made this. Like, for her to not say Arya Stark, it's a huge thing for her because that's like what she's been holding deep down inside where nobody could get to it and keeping it safe and secret and protected. And she had to have all of that stripped away. And I think that the beatings or the training from the Waif was a way to establish that she still did have ambition and that there was still a spark in there. And that even if she was lying about the test, she stood up and defended herself.
Yeah.
And it was humbling. It was clearly humbling for her, that poor little face. It was so humbling for her to have to say, I'm no one. I am not I'm not a daughter of anybody. I'm not a sister of anybody. I'm nobody. That was a huge concession for Arya to make, in my opinion.
Well, I feel a little bit differently. Like, I agree in some respects, but like kind of what you were saying, Chooch, about like he seemed to like believe her more readily than seemed like he would have otherwise. I think the key to this test is not necessarily that he sincerely believes that's what's inside, as much as have you gotten better at hiding it? Because I feel like what's going on in this testing, and maybe I'm wrong, but this has always been kind of my interpretation, is that it's not so much that they really want you to inside feel like you are no one. Maybe that's like super advanced level, but the whole idea is that inside you know you are someone, and so being able to convincingly say that you're no one is a critical skill that they absolutely require. Now, maybe the even advanced level above that is that once you get good enough at saying that you're no one and you do it often enough, you're increasingly making it true just through habit and repetition. You know what I mean? It's like the more time you spend saying that you're no one and acting as if you're no one and not indulging your inner life, the more it's going to slip away. And that's, I think, how they work, is that it's not that you have to be sincere when you say it. It's that you have to be convincing to others when you say it. That's always my interpretation.
Yeah, I'd realize like the Waif isn't perfect either, and she's just in training as well, so you don't have to be. fully committed, so to speak, to still be advancing.
Another very minor nitpick about the show, and this is not like it's barely even a nitpick as much as something that just occurred to me this time, is that in the show, by having Jaqen H'ghar be like the guy that she's training under at this place when he isn't in the books, I think is a good choice for the show, but it also just makes it a little weird to have all this training be so focused on this idea that you never say your name or you can't admit that you even have a name. But he did introduce himself. Like, that's how we know his name, is that he told her what his name was. A man's name is Jaqen H'ghar. So like maybe that's not his real name, but it's also just kind of it was a thing. And so the idea that we do actually know his name has this weird sort of undercurrent to the whole idea of the training, whereas in the books during this sequence we don't have actual proper names for any of the people there.
Interesting. Let's jump over to Winterfell.
Mm-hmm.
Got Boltons and Karstarks ready to shake things up. I did remember the Karstark name. It was familiar to me. I didn't necessarily remember what anybody looked like in the previous scenes they showed that locked it in immediately. But I think I would have known without seeing that. I would have been comfortable.
Even from the perspective of the show, from what I was able to see, that dude's not even alive. So.
I think we're breaking up, Nutty, but I think she's saying that the guy we see in this scene was not in it before. I think is what she's saying. I tend to agree, but like this is supposed to be the son.
That's what Chooch was saying, I think, was that this guy wasn't recognized, but he remembered it from the previous.
I recognized the name for sure.
Yeah, the
but
name.
I was just saying, showing the previously on definitely locked it in, of who they were immediately.
Yeah. This scene was definitely a big part of what I was talking about when I was saying that this season is not wasting any time. Because this is kind of like with Prince Doran getting killed last week. Like, I didn't see this coming because it's just kind of so audacious and moving the plot forward. Now, I had some quibbles that I bet I'm not the only one, that there was some elements of this that just felt, again, like it's like, okay, how many more scenes do we need to show to convince us that Ramsay's a monster? I mean, we kind of know that. We don't really need more examples of just how much of a monster he is necessarily. Although in this case, I feel like what happened is kind of story critical, because first of all, the idea that he felt like he had to get rid of this possible heir seems plot relevant. Like that is explicitly why he killed his father, is he needed there to not be an heir that could overtake him.
Well, yeah, it was constantly a threat over his head.
Right, and specifically the idea, but also the way he did it, I suspect is going to be a problem for him, because it's a perfect example of what Roose was saying shortly before all that went down, is that like you're going to get a reputation for being a mad dog and people are going to treat you that way.
Yeah.
The problem is she's a Frey. The Freys are one of their Bolton's last remaining allied houses, and that was largely on the basis of Roose having taken one of the Freys to be his wife.
Yeah.
So now, having killed her and the half-Frey heir to Winterfell, having killed her in a way that cannot possibly be explained as in childbirth or in poison or whatever.
She was poisoned by their enemies.
And then eaten by the dogs.
Yeah, well, meat is meat. I think the only thing...
But the point is, the Freys, if they hear, oh, poisoned? That's super sad. Let's see the body.
Oh, we buried her.
No.
We burned her.
No. You think Walder Frey is going to deal with that? No. I think, as awful as it was to have it happen and to have a scene where there's feeding, so I don't like the scene, but from a story perspective, I feel like the way he did it will matter, because he won't be able to cover it up.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
that
and
makes
I
sense.
think
Agreed.
I really enjoyed, for obvious reasons, that the way that Roose died because of the way he killed Kat Stark. He was up close, intimate, in her face, did it, you know what I mean? And then that was played right back to him by his child, who he's
Rob,
been
Rob Stark?
manipulating and stuff.
Rob Stark?
Yeah, but Roose is the one that killed Kat, is what Viv is saying.
Isn't he?
Roose is the one that killed Rob.
Is
Didn't
he?
he also
He had
stab?
gotten some crossbow bolts. No,
I
Kat
thought
got
he
her
killed
throat
her at some
slit by
point.
Kat got her throat slit. Yeah.
Who slit her throat?
No, she
I
slit
don't-
somebody. She slit the daughter's throat. The
And-
Oh,
other.
that's right.
and
Okay.
then
Oh,
she
that's
got
right.
her throat slit. And
You're
I don't
right.
know. I don't actually know for sure if we
Oh, yeah, they
even
didn't
see the
show
face
who.
of who did it
Yeah.
because it was kind of
It was,
like a last shot before we
yeah.
cut to
Yeah.
black thing.
Yeah.
But he definitely was the one that was up in Rob's face and stabbed him in the gut like that. So it was definitely similar to that. So
Yeah.
that's the similar imagery that was totally there.
Yeah. I was grateful for that, though.
And it had to be intentionally vague that for that split second, nobody quite knew who stabbed who.
I
It could
thought
have gone either way. I have an heir now. See ya.
I was like, oh my God, Roose is killing Ramsay. This is
I know.
awesome. Because once he had a son born, I could see Roose doing that.
It was just a matter of time.
Yeah.
It was always going to be one or the other. Right?
Yeah, that was like why I was saying that this was why I was thinking this season's not wasting time is because once there is this heir, I was thinking one of them is going to have to kill the other. There's no other way this can go. But I had just assumed that the show was going to drag that out for 3 or 4 episodes. But to have it just happen, nope, just bam, right there.
Yeah.
What I will say is that young Lord Karstark is remarkably able to tell which way the wind is blowing, I guess.
Yeah. I have a feeling they had that planned ahead of time, honestly.
Yeah. Congratulations, Lord Bolton. Oh,
Yeah.
gosh. Okay, well, congratulations, Lord Bolton.
Right. Yeah. Well, so I did like the subtleness with the Meister. So they kind of reinforced his neutrality in 2 ways. One is when he says, Ramsay says, she was poisoned by our enemies, and the Meister says she was, or he was poisoned by, and he says he was poisoned by his enemies. Didn't say our enemies.
Yeah.
And when Walda's called down, all he said was, "Lord Bolton is sent for you,"
Yeah.
not the new Lord Bolton, or because he knew what she was walking into, and he's neutral as the Meister and has to just go with it, I guess. But
Yeah.
oof.
Like I was saying before, I think that they kind of they tried, I think, possibly to lower the horror level, because in the previous episode, he had sent his Chicky Boo to the dogs. Meat is meat, feed the dogs.
Yeah.
So, he probably would have ended up, he probably threw his dad out to the dogs too. But the thing, it's almost like with the Red Wedding, it was like, it's bad enough. Did you have to show the little, abortion thing that they gave Rob's wife at it too? That little scramble wasn't necessary. And I felt the same way about that scene, because they did not have to show us that baby's face. That was completely unnecessary and just made it so much more horrible, because you saw his little face for a second.
This is the part of the show that I like to call #FuckThisShow. Because that's really what I felt. A #FuckThisShow. And they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to have us hear cries or screams or whatever. They could have just talked about it later, but they did it. And this is a story from a viewer and a friend. She is pregnant, and while she was watching that scene, it made her leak. The baby crying made her leak.
Yeah.
So, fuck this show. That's that. Oh, and for some reason, Waldo looks a lot younger, or looked a lot younger.
I mean, it's the same actress.
I know it is. I just, for some reason, I'm like, oh my God, she looks like, I never thought of her as like a teenager, but
the
she looks like a
perspective
teenager.
of when you have the specter of death standing next to somebody, they always look younger.
Yeah.
Except Walter Frey. Fuck him.
I mean, honestly, the scene is awful. It's horrifying, and I wish that something else had happened because I certainly didn't enjoy watching it. That said, I think all things considered, I feel like the choice of the method is going to have like plot reasons.
Totally, yeah.
Like and I sure hope it does because otherwise I don't forgive it as much as I do.
I'm still waiting for the payoff on the Red Wedding Baby murder. So.
Well, yeah, I mean there was no story reason for that other than to just make it really clear that there was not going to be a surviving baby, which is it was shock value in that case. There's no question. And so but what I was going to say about this one is, despite it being horrifying in concept, we really didn't see anything. And so, all things considered, it could have been worse. And I'm glad that it wasn't worse, even if it was still awful.
Yeah.
But I can only just hope that, I mean, because I think what the show is definitely setting up, and it's just, over the several seasons it's been taking its time getting there, is that ultimately, see, this is where Ramsay has really gone like past the point of no return, not from any kind of a moral standpoint because he crossed that a long time ago, but from just the sustainability of his own case here. Because he was only able to get away with so much because Roos was good and controlled and was kind of there to kind of cover stuff up, smooth over the damaged things, say, nope, you can't do it this time, do that, you play your games over there, you can't mess around with this part. Here's our strategy, here's what we have to do. No, you can't go attack Castle Black, that's stupid. Ramsay's only been able to get away with stuff for so long because he had Roos covering for him that way. Now that he's killed Roos in a way that, like, even if he gets the Maester to, like, nobody except Lord Karstark and the Maester saw with Roos.
Right.
But everybody in that courtyard saw Walda walking around with this newborn baby.
Yeah.
And probably heard them screaming from the dogs. Like,
I'm sure.
And there's not going to be any way, like, the Freys are going to want to see the body.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be able to cover it up. And so
I don't think he's even thinking that far. He's just thinking about.
I know that he's not. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead.
What I'm saying though is that I think that's the point, is that they're trying to show us his craziness is finally going to bite him in the ass because he's not going to be able to keep covering this up, and it's going to make their own people turn on them.
Right, and so I guess what his opinion is, it doesn't matter. All we need is this core allegiance. Mm-hmm. We have the Karstarks, then we're good. I think he said another house, but I don't remember what the name was.
The Umbers and the Manderleys are the two others, which at least we don't know much about them in the show. But at least in the books, those are two houses that the Boltons are not going to have strong support from.
Well, and they're going to have a surprise when they get to Castle Black anyways, because there's a giant there. Those are wildlings there. Those are not brothers, that are not prepared for an attack from the south. They're going to expect attack from every direction. Mm-hmm. So it could get interesting if he does go to Castle Black.
Yeah, I would love to see him get crushed there by a giant, but get sat on by 1/1.
Yeah.
Taylin doesn't feel the Freys are going to be affected. She thinks it's more a matter of the Northmen. And her thinking is that the Freys are really far away and they're essentially just control the bridge and like they don't really have any power other than that.
Well, but the problem is that by doing all this stuff, attempting this stuff with Sansa, the Boltons made enemies of the Lannisters, and they're counting on the Freys to keep the Lannisters from coming north.
Because of that river. Yeah, all things matter. The reason that they're so powerful is because of the twins. Right. And so until he's dead, he's going to hold that power until they get him out of that castle.
Yeah, that's why it was,
I just didn't remember what the river separated.
Mm-hmm. That was exactly why it was such a big deal that Robb made that alliance and then broke it. That he felt like he had to do that because they needed Like, yes, they're just the gatekeepers, except it's an important gate. It really makes a difference tactically.
And Frey knows it, and he's trying every which way to maneuver and profit from it as he would. And it's just like, God, she was so sweet and so simple and so nice to Ramsey. It's just such bullshit. You know, I read an article about how, not to worry, HBO fans, this is going to be the year of the woman. So I guess instead of rapes, now we get women fed to dogs. Is that the trade-off?
Yeah, well, I mean,
I guess.
Yeah. But it's not like that's a pattern.
No.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's third or fourth time on this show, but it's not a pattern.
Think about, though, what we are looking at in terms of the pattern is that we've got Arya, who's going to continue her training, Sansa, who I think is getting put into a situation where she's going to be able to do some cool stuff. Cersei is going to try to take her control back, and then Yara too, which we haven't really gotten back around to Pike yet, but
she'll be last.
Yeah, so I think that there's lots of women trying to do their thing, and then Brienne, of course, is still doing their thing, and who knows if we're going to actually even go back to Dorne, because the Sand Snakes and Dorne were no-shows this time.
Yeah,
that's going to be sad if they don't. Paulette, Castle Black has something else. A hungry direwolf.
Yes.
Ramsey gets along with dogs, right? Ramsey, meet Ghost. Ghost. Oh, meet, M-E-A-T, Ramsey. So a little further north, somewhere on the road to Castle Black, presumably, they're catching Sansa up, and they basically say, that this is a race to Castle Black. If we get there first, we'll be protected. And learn that Theon is not going to go with them. He's going home.
Yeah. That's a surprising decision.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't really object to it necessarily. I'm willing to see what they're going to do with the story, but I didn't quite buy it. Okay, I take it back. I don't buy it for the reasons he said.
Okay. That they can protect him better, protect her better.
Well, I think that's true, but I think that what it is it's more like it's one thing if she needed him. So it's like, to some extent, it's what he said, but that's not a reason that he has to leave. You know what I mean? Like, it's good. Right. Yeah, Brienne can protect her, Sansa, even better than he could. That's true. But that's not a reason that he has to leave. Yeah. So why is he leaving? Well, I think it's honestly because he he doesn't want to be faced with people who know what he did and are either going to try to pretend that it didn't happen, or he doesn't even really want forgiveness, I don't think. Right. And so to have to be navigating that touchy scenario of, well, do they forgive me or do they really mean it? And that sort of uncertainty is, he can't bear it. Like, who hates me, who doesn't hate me, the people who say they don't hate me, do they mean it? Like, that sort of uncertainty, whereas at least if he goes back to Pike, he's just like, yeah, everyone's going to hate me there. So
right.
I agree with that completely. Theon doesn't want forgiveness. He doesn't want to be saved. He doesn't want to be redeemed. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. Like, yeah, I did bad things, and yeah, I did a couple of good things, but that doesn't erase the things that I did wrong. Yeah. And I don't care what any of you say. When I betrayed Robb, I started all of this, and and punishing himself, and I think it's neat.
Yeah. He's been actively watching. He's been actively watching Sansa get raped and all these horrors happening to her. And it's like, I think, the simplicity of his childhood with the Starks, obviously, the way things have turned out, even as poignant as the moment he and Sansa had, that was so powerful. And I just wanted him to stay with her because I felt like she would protect him now. But it was also, Yara is at home. And Yara is of his blood, understands the throat-slitting nature of the Ironborn, and loves him. She proved that. How many times did she try to
Yeah.
rescue him? That's like the one home I think is more Yara than home, because
Right.
home is where his dad is. You know, Yara's home, and that's all he's ever really wanted was to go home. So it made sense to me that that was where he wanted to go, although I was worried about him before, the excitement.
Right. And I hadn't thought about her, Sansa leaving Winterfell, how that's going to affect Littlefinger's plans. And I mean, we haven't heard from him for a while. He's been floating out there somewhere, but presumably, I don't know. It's
It's going to
'cause
matter
I
when
felt
he
that
shows up again.
yeah. So we got the feeling that he didn't necessarily want to leave her there, but this was
Yeah.
the part she had to play for now.
Am I remembering right that the reason he left Winterfell was because Cersei specifically sent for him and he wasn't prepared to basically let it be known yet what he was doing?
I think
And
so.
so he went back to talk to her. But did he actually show up there? I don't remember now where that was all left.
Did he talk to Cersei?
Yeah, like I don't remember where he's supposed to be now. Is he supposed to be on his way back, or did he actually meet up with her? I don't remember now. I think because we talked about like what he might say about what he's been doing and whether he was with Sansa or something, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I think I remember him meeting with Cersei, and then he obviously met with other people and given, presumably given what, not Ramsay, but not, I was going to say Lancel, but not Lancel, but the young guy, the young whore at the brothel, gave him essentially to the High Sparrow, right, to trap Loras. And I don't know that he said where he was going after that. Yeah. He's hanging out there somewhere, but yeah, I guess we'll see.
I'm
Or
looking it
not.
up.
Who knows? Maybe we'll forget about him. Maybe they'll forget.
Let's see. Okay, so basically the last time we saw him is when he double-crossed Cersei because so Marjorie and Loras had been arrested because of Olivar, the prostitute who worked for Littlefinger.
Right.
And so then when Olenna, when he's talking to Olenna, basically Olenna says, if Marjorie and Loras go down, I will tell the queen that you were involved with Joffrey's murder. And so he doesn't want that. So what he says is, I will give you Olivar, basically. Right. And that's how Cersei gets arrested.
Right.
But that's the last time we saw him. So what's he up to now? Hard to say, although it seems like the last action we saw him take was choosing sides. So we'll see. I definitely want to know what he's up to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's last place we visit Pike, which had been quite a while. Similar to Marine, it's the Iron Islands have kind of slid back. They've lost everything. Everything they gained on land has been taken back by the actual armies.
Mm-hmm.
Go figure. They have a great navy, but nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly seems like Papa Pike's gone a little mad. Just, we'll attack them because I say it. There was a war, they're back. What's the point? We're going to lose everything if we keep pushing so hard.
Right.
He's another guy that needs a king over him. He seems like he's like a follower, except he won't listen to women, like his super intelligent daughter.
When I was watching this, I kept thinking, is the only reason why Balon is still alive and didn't die in season 3 just so that they can avoid having the whole Kingsmoot thing?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
I
so.
think that's why.
I think it was to delay the religious aspect and the king's moot.
Yeah.
Mhm. And honestly, I think is, at least as far as the way the show is moving the plot along, I think it actually does fit better here than it would
Oh,
have if
agreed.
they had tried to do it when it happened contemporaneously in the show. It did lead to some weirdness, just namely, like Melisandre's spell going unfulfilled for so long.
Hmm.
But I am excited because, again, this is incorporating stuff that happens in the books with one storyline, but with stuff that we don't know because it's beyond the books in other storylines.
Right.
Here's my theory, only based on what we've seen in the show, is that Theon is going to return to Pike and become Yara's advisor as she pursues the throne in the Kingsmoot. Brief aside, I don't know why they changed the sea stone chair to the salt throne. That seems like a weird change to me, but whatever. Yeah. He's going to advise her, in particular, giving her additional detail about here's the state of where everybody's at right now, and maybe this is why we don't want to mess around with that. And maybe what we want to do instead is find somewhere where our fleet of ships will be useful. Gosh, who else on this show just recently had a fleet burned?
Interesting. I like where you're going. I like where you're going with this. One thing that I want to say that I really dug about this is dealing with there's speculation in the book that something had happened, but the way that it's reported is there was a storm and the bridge broke free while Balon was on it, and he washed ashore 2 days later.
Right.
And so it's seen as natural occurrence, but there are people who are like, really? So Balon, he went away in a storm of that castle? Like, it was just really
his
hard
whole
to
life,
believe
yeah.
that he had been going his whole life over these treacherous passes and that he'd be washed away in a storm. And that these passes had been up forever and then it would just go away. And there's actually there's a quote here, and I don't want to start it too soon, so let's see. You know what? Never mind. I can't find the quote. Oh, here it is. Sorry. You know how Pike's built on headland and part on the rocks on the islands off the shore with the bridges in between? The way I heard it in Lordsport, there was a blow coming in from the west, rain and thunder, and old King Balon was crossing one of them bridges when the wind got hold of it and just tore the thing to pieces. He washed up 2 days later, all bloated. This isn't it. Sorry. This is not the quote I meant to do. No. I'm sorry. Forget me.
That's
You
all right.
guys talk. I'll look for my quote.
But the other thing that made the whole thing suspicious is that his brother Euron, Crow's Eye, who had been at sea in unknown locations for years and years and years, literally shows up the day after Balon dies. And everyone's like, that seems fishy.
Fishy.
All I know is I loved seeing Yara and the ferociousness of her, and still the nobleness of character that she has, and it really struck me this week. I didn't notice it ever before in previous seasons, and it may just be because the actress has grown. She's no longer as young, but Mira and Yara are so similar to me. Not specifically in looks, but as like, you know what I mean? Their passion, they'll grab a knife, they'll do whatever has to be done, and they don't really know what to do when they're not doing something. They can't sit and twiddle their thumbs, They're like women of action and stuff. So I really enjoyed seeing that similarity between them, even though it's because of bad things happening to them.
So I found my quote, by the way, and it's the mysterious ghost of Highheart, and this is told to the Brotherhood Without Banners about her prophetic dream. I dreamt of a man without a face, waiting on a bridge that swayed and swung. On his shoulder perched a drowned crow with seaweed hanging from his wings. So the whole nonsense of Euron returning shortly after his brother's death, and then this prophecy is really what fueled everyone to believe, well, Euron had a faceless man kill him, but we never actually got confirmation.
Mhm.
And in the show, they're like, oh yeah, definitely murder.
Yeah. Well, it's a better story that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, well, and visually, you're not going to do everything with hearsay, right?
Well, so
Hey, he's a pirate.
okay, what I was going to say now, I'm like torn in two different directions. One is to follow up with what Viv was talking about with Yara and Yara being cool. One of the things that I'm really pumped for is in the books, the character is named Asha, A-S-H-A, and presumably she's changed to Yara because her name was similar to Osha and so on. But in the books, where Yara becomes an awesome badass character is the Kingsmoot and that whole sequence.
Yeah.
That's when she starts being awesome.
But we don't want to spoil anything.
That's all I'll say about it. But the problem, so what was a little frustrating for that character in the show is they had delayed that whole storyline, and they had to come up with other stuff for her to do, and that just made the whole thing feel a little bit strange. Like, who is she? Because at least our perception from the books of who she is was largely defined on a story that they weren't doing yet.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful for that to be cool in the show too.
So that's clearly something big because when the moment he said it in the show, I get a squee from my left. Ooh, Kingsmoot, Kingsmoot, Kingsmoot!
Kingsmoot!
I'm looking at
It was
a
more
Tri-Wizard tournament.
I didn't get that excited. I got more excited for the Kingsmoot for the reasons that Christiana just explained.
I was also, though, excited. This was the other thing I was tempted to say earlier is Euron is so different than I imagined him, and yet I found him really compelling.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, he looks way younger, which, A, could be true anyway. He could just be a much younger brother. That does happen.
Theon's a much younger brother than the brothers who passed.
Right, but and so that it could be that, but it could also be that like he looks younger than he should, maybe, because there's something going on. So I liked that, but then also just the idea that he, on the one hand, he sounds very lucid, but on the other hand, the things he's saying are kind of bananas.
Right.
I am the drowned god.
Yeah.
And it's like, I heard your men had to tie you to the mast to keep you from going overboard. And he's like, yep, they did.
And I cut their tongues out.
Because
I need some silence.
As you do. And then
thunderstorm.
that whole the wind is blowing, and we see Balon, who does this all the time, having to hang on to the ropes and stuff, and Euron's just doing this thing. He's just got neither hand is on one of the ropes, and he's just riding the bridge like it's nothing, and laughing at Balon about it. And it's just like, this guy's got some weird mixture of hot and creepy going on.
Hot and creepy.
And I don't know if it was the age thing, but he looks more like Theon than Balon does.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by how they're going to handle this character. This is not really spoiler except for character names. Do we know, have they also cast Victorian, or are they just leaving out Victorian?
I'm not looking at all at the casting. I don't want any, like I said, I don't know. I don't know if Nutty knows.
I purposefully tried to keep my eyes off, but a quick Google search of Euron Greyjoy gives me a people also searched for Victoron Greyjoy. So I'm going to click that and see if there are images of a person. And
Not spoil anything.
No spoilers. I'm only seeing fan art.
Yeah. I kind of hope that they don't, just because I don't think it's really necessary to have both.
Although, can I just say, someone thinks that they did a Photoshop manipulation. They really think Mads Mikkelsen would make a great Victoron, and I have to agree.
I agree if they're gonna cast him, but my guess is, just in the interest of simplifying the story, that they'll just have Euron kind of take the place of both of those characters. Is my
Yeah.
guess.
Agreed.
Yeah, that would follow what they've been doing so far with characters.
But
I
yeah,
don't remember him ever talking about brothers or anything before, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, none of this came up until it was in book 3, but it was so that's why it's that far delayed, in the show, is that it would have been happening contemporaneously with Rob dealing with his alliance to the Freys and
It made
all
more
of that stuff.
in the book. I think it made a little more sense why Stannis felt threatened by the Greyjoys. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was the War of the Five Kings, right? And Balon was one of them.
Yeah, but Balon wasn't really doing anything the way Joffrey and Robb and all the other kings were.
But Stannis' whole thing was that he was the rightful heir. Like, he was the only one that really deserved it. And so anyone that was out there saying that, no, I'm going to be my own king, I don't respect.
I understand that. I totally get it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kings but me.
So they bury Balon, and apparently there will be some sort of, my notes I put, apparently there will be some sort of council to select the next king.
Mm-hmm.
Kingsmoot!
Because I think Kingsmoot, I think of an Entmoot, I think of just people coming together and chatting it out,
Yeah.
Then I guess we know who's going to show up to surprise Yara. I'm presumably the uncle would show up, though, like you say, clearly it doesn't make sense to have the king die and then suddenly have the
It's
brother
so
show up.
convenient.
Here's the thing, though. Before Euron actually showed up, I thought maybe they were going to have Yara kill him. Certainly, the way their last conversation had gone,
she had daggers in her eyes.
I thought it was going to be Yara that was going to just kill Balon and just say, "Look, I got to take charge here. He's not, he's going to ruin us." And so, and the idea that she might have done it specifically with this expectation of, I don't have to deal with the Kingsmoot. I'm his heir, therefore, which certainly seems to already be her expectation.
Yeah.
But I was interested. So, what do you guys think? They're on the beach. Certainly, she's talking to the drowned priest. I don't know if so. In the books, she has another uncle known as the Damp Hair, who is a drowned priest, and the guy talks like that's who it is, but they don't say that he's her uncle.
Well, I think we met him before when Theon went back.
Oh, you might be right.
Because they did the whole CPR thing, didn't they? Am I just making that up in my memory?
Maybe. I think that might have been a case, too, though, where we saw a drowned priest that they didn't say one way or the other whether it was him or not. I may be mistaken.
Yeah, I have had no impression there's any relationship happening.
Now, that said, the way this guy talked, though, made me think he's going to be a character, not just like, so even if he is just a drowned priest and not her uncle who is a drowned priest, he seems like he's going to be an ongoing character because he's the one that, I guess, seems like he's the one that decides that, oh, guess what, Kingsmoot. You say you heir? Nope, Kingsmoot.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll win.
In the books, was it that he was calling for the Kingsmoot so that Asha could be placed on the throne, or was he doing it to prevent her? Because in the show, it seems like he's trying to prevent her.
Yeah, I think it was to prevent her because, not that it was necessarily obvious, because I think what happened in the books is that Euron shows up, suspicious timing, and basically just marches in and sits down on the throne and says, "All right, it's me now." And everyone's like, "Wait a minute, what's going on here?" And then the idea that they're going to actually do a Kingsmoot in the books is like this sort of like nobody's done a Kingsmoot in hundreds of years. It doesn't work like that anymore. But because now the succession is all complicated, like in principle, Asha Yara was Balon's heir, except that nobody, will people really follow a woman? Maybe not. Euron, okay, well, could be him, except that's suspicious. We think maybe he killed Balon. Also, he's not been around for a while. We don't know what he's doing. So there's a lot going on. And so the Kingsmoot is kind of this, it's not this expected ritual, it was, we got to do something to figure this out, even if it means dusting off the old law books and doing this thing we haven't done in a long time.
Yeah,
But I
I do.
definitely agree. In the show, it feels like, it's maybe more expected, but that he's not interested in having her be the one.
I looked it
I
up,
didn't
by the
get
way, and who we saw in season 2 was confirmed to not be the damn fair.
Hmm.
So
Damn fair. See, like, why would it be damn fair and not damp hair? Damp hair makes literal sense.
that.
okay, it's not the damp hair
Yeah.
or the damn fair.
Fair enough.
We know I can't
Oh.
pronounce things, so.
No, it's funny. You're not the only person I've heard say it like that, but that one is just one where I could see it go either way, and like literally, it could be spelled that way, except it just feels like
Yep.
damp hair makes sense in this show.
So I didn't really get a want her or don't want her from that conversation. I got a just slow your roll, and it didn't. It did seem like, of course, there would be a king's mood. It seemed like it didn't seem like something that hasn't happened in a long time. To me, it seemed like just slow your roll. We're gonna follow policy. We're gonna follow protocol.
Well, and
I
yet
didn't really get a judgment from it.
I agree in the sense that if we're going just by his line, but at the same time, like, she clearly did not expect that to happen.
Right.
So I feel like if
I thought it was just checking or just a reminder. Yeah.
But I
So
don't
I
know.
wonder
We'll see.
what Theon returning would that change anything other
I
than
don't know.
they know he can't have an heir, so I don't know how that would really.
Well, I definitely think I don't think he could even really be considered for being in the spot, but nor would he seek it. I don't think at this point. Like, even the inability to have an heir, he's just not necessarily temperamentally suited for it anymore.
Right.
Or ever. But it actually just occurs to me too, though, that like my whole theory about the fleet going off to Marine, that doesn't have to mean that Yara, would send it that way, because Euron is actually, he's the one that's been at sea and might be more likely to know what's going on over there. So that might be his idea.
Yep. And the whole thing about not being able to produce an heir, I mentioned this before, but this growing thing about various characters not being able to produce heirs either physically or because of oaths they take, it seems like a trend, and I don't know what it means, but it's something that I've definitely been noticing, because it's like, Danny, you want to get the Iron Throne, but you can't have kids. So what happens when you die? And I don't know. I'm just mentioning it. I don't know what it means, but I think it's important.
Well, and then we even have John, who's not king precisely, but Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and certainly there's lots going on there. But his oath as a brother of the Night's Watch says he can't have kids, and trying to.
And who knows what resurrection does?
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, is that we, what is everybody's theory about, like, what's John like when he wakes up? Is he evil?
I think he'll be like
Zombie John
Dondarrion. He'll be normal. Yeah.
Was Dondarrion normal though?
He was. He had his memories.
He was consistent on the show.
Yeah, he had his memories. He had his personality. He didn't seem to be like a zombie or,
Well, okay.
I guess I don't understand what the difference is.
What I mean to say
loony.
is we didn't know him before.
Yeah,
right,
we can't compare.
Right. We don't know if he was changed by the experience, but I don't think they implied at all that he had been changed.
I don't mean changed necessarily in like, oh, he's like a demon in human form now or something. What I mean is that what he said was that he sort of felt less himself every time. Like he lost something in the process every time.
Right, and that makes sense, but I think that the guys with him would have said, oh, he's totally different, or,
I don't think they would have said a single thing. They idolize him. He is their mascot. I mean, the reason they continue doing everything is because, dude, this guy keeps rising from the dead. We must be doing the right thing. So even if they have doubts, they're not going to say a thing.
Paulette just essentially said, "Didn't his watch end until death end my watch? If John was dead, his watch ended, right?"
That seems kind of like a technicality, though. I love that idea, but I also just sort of feel like
I don't think John would see it that way.
Yeah, in any kind of a moral sense, I don't think that it's like, oh well. Now the fact that it was his own brothers of the Night's Watch that killed him, that might be a reason to break your oath. But at the same time, he's got other brothers now getting his back.
Who fought really hard for him, so it gives him even more reason. I think that John is not back like normal human whatever. I think there's something. I don't know what it is. I've long suspected that John would come back in a similar form that Cold Hands did, which is a character from the books who looks normal but isn't, and many people suspect is risen from the dead, but not a white, doesn't have the eyes or anything else. But yeah, I think that John is something in between, and I'm not sure exactly what. I'm just going to go with the whole he was warged into ghost, and so his sanity is his own, but I definitely think the whole I'm a little bit less each time, like Beric Dondarrion said. Yeah, I think there's something to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I probably don't expect him to be able to have children in a state of somewhere in between.
Well, we'll see. I feel like we're missing a plot line, but I can't think what it would have been.
No, I've been Xing out. We've hit every area.
Okay, yeah, I guess so. Maybe it's just that I was sort of missing that we didn't have anything from Danny in this episode.
Yeah,
true.
Not Dario or Jorah either.
Nope.
Yep. I'll have to wait for next week to do the scale check.
Did we have any feedback that we didn't cover?
There were some things from last episode, but I think we pretty well covered everything.
Okay.
Like nothing jumped out that was particularly unique. Yeah. We have ratings.
Yes, ratings.
For this episode. Does anybody have one? I have one.
Go ahead.
From something I saw of a theme from this. I mean, there was the home theme. Obviously, a couple people mentioned home. But I am going to give it 10 out of 10 characters feeling useless.
Nice.
It's like every other scene opened or started with somebody feeling totally useless.
I'm going to give it 9 out of 10 Dreams of Dragons. I feel like there were parts of the episode that were worth a 10, and then there were other parts that brought it back down to 9. That's just how I felt about it. But 9 is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And Viv, do you have a rating for this episode or
I have them for
episode?
both.
Excellent.
So my rating for last week is a 9.0 because they didn't show me Bran, damn it. And this week it's a 9.75 for the unnecessary brutality of Lady Walda and the wee Bolton Bairn.
Nice. And I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 hashtag fuck this show. Would have gotten a 10 without that scene. Because the dragons and direwolves and Jon Resurrection would have been enough to make me crazy.
Mm-hmm. I think I don't think I've given the disclaimer this season yet that my rating scale is actually they all start at 9, and so what I'm giving is what the decimal point is. So to me, this was a full-on 10, and the last one was essentially a 9.8. I think I did 8. But yeah, we critique because that's what we're gonna do. But they all are essentially nitpicks, pretty small, in the grand scheme of things.
Well, it's all within the perspective of a show that we love enough to have been doing a podcast for it. For
Right, absolutely.
And Viv actually brought our rating for last episode up by 3%.
Nice.
Yes. So we were 8 out of 10 last episode, and we are 8.3 out of 10 for last episode. This episode, we are 9.4 out of 10. So.
All right. Cool. Do we have any other business? Any other? I think that covers it all.
Yeah.
So we're on a regular schedule. Next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll be streaming. This will come out in podcast form the next couple days. We will have some Balticon news very soon. There was a little slow going, but things are shaping up as far as the scheduling for Balticon and everything that's going on. So we're going to have some great news coming with our participation there. If you're going to be Memorial Day weekend in Baltimore Inner Harbor, absolutely look us up. We'll have stuff on the website when it gets closer of exactly what we're going to be doing, where we're going to be. I'd like to thank everybody who checked in with us on the Q&A app. This is very cool. And everybody else, send in more feedbacks, more entries for our $50 Amazon or iTunes, whatever you prefer, gift card at the end of the season for interacting with us. It's really great to be able to hear from everybody. That's going to do it for us for this week. We'll talk to you next week.
If you have feedback for the Beyond the Wall podcast, you can email us at btw@specficmedia.com. You can also leave us a comment on the website. Go to specficmedia.com where you'll find a shiny BTW button. That'll take you right to our page. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 3.0 Unported license. Feel free to share and remix. Just give us credit and don't charge money for it.